This is the only video you are ever going to need if you want to sign clients for your agency from paid ads. If you're an agency owner doing 20 to 200K a month and you are stuck relying on inconsistent referrals, spamming people with cold outreach, or posting hours of content a day, then stick around because I'm going to show you my full guide on how to scale an agency consistently and quickly to 200K a month or more with paid ads. And this is the exact system we use to generate over $2 million in agency revenue from just 250K in ad spend. This is a proven, repeatable system that has been tested across dozens of agencies in every single niche, from e-com to local services to B2Bs and even SaaS. In this free course, I'm going to walk you through the complete system, from crafting an offer that converts cold traffic to building a funnel that books you qualified sales calls on autopilot, how to get 88% of these people to actually show up, how to close leads from cold ads at 30% or more, and how to productize your fulfillment process so you can just keep scaling and scaling and scaling and building a factory within your agency. So let's get into it. Now, as you can see, we have quite a lot to cover here. We're going to go through foundations, ad creation, account setup and optimization, the funnel, the sales process, and fulfillment. I want to quickly start with why you should watch this video. I promise you that in 2026, paid ads are the only predictable path to scale. If you don't know who I am or why you should trust me, allow me to introduce myself. My name is George Clements. I was able to scale my direct-to-consumer agency, Paid House Media, to over 2.5 million a year. We signed 200 clients with paid ads with only 20K a month in ad spend. So this is all time. We spent 250K on ads. We cash collected $1 million from these ads, but we have collected way more than that on the back end. You can see within my ads manager, we spent 250K last year. We booked 739 sales calls, okay, qualified sales calls, I might add, and that was at a cost of around $300, which in this niche is pretty good. Okay, we've also done this for dozens of other agencies. We're booking calls with brands that do 5 to 10 million a year, 5K a month for 6-month contracts. We're booking calls for as little as under $200. I actually scaled my agency in just 3 months from 50 to 155K from this ad system that I'm about to show you. So with that out the way, hopefully you feel a little bit more comfortable listening to me now. So there are really 3 stages of agency growth. Stage 1, you're scrambling to get results and you just have to do what you can to get cash in your pocket. Now, frankly, if this is you, I can't help you. I'm really only speaking to those of you who are in stage 2 and stage 3. So if you're at least 15K a month plus and you have proven service delivery systems and you have great client results, your problem is just that you can't get enough leads in the door predictably. Maybe you're signing 2, 3, or 5 clients a month, and if you could just get to 10 to 15 clients a month, you would scale way quicker. I am talking directly to you. So let's jump into this. And the reason I say this, of course, is because paid ads cost money. Cold outreach is completely free. It just takes up a lot of time. And around stage 2, you realize that spending money is better than you spending time. And that's when paid ads start to make sense. Now, I'm going to break down exactly how much you need to spend on paid ads to get results, but I just want to start with this. So let's jump into warm traffic versus cold traffic. Now, if you're not aware, paid ads are really where you target cold traffic and you sign on strangers who have never heard from you before. Now, this is quite difficult because you are talking to people who have no idea who you are, but it's also the most important thing for you to crack in your business. This little circle here is an example of your market, okay? This segment here, which we might call, I don't know, 4%, 3%, 2%, might be the segment that knows you. Let's say you've got a decent following on social media, or you go to networking events all the time. This is sort of your warm traffic, okay? The problem is that it's not very large, okay? It's not very big and it's very slow to grow. Warm traffic is where people buy you for your personality and your reputation. Unfortunately, though, it's limited to the amount of people that know you. So warm traffic really becomes powerful when you have millions of followers. Think Alex Hormozy, Iman Gadzhi. These people are able to make tens of millions of dollars from their warm traffic because their warm traffic looks more like this. The amount of people that know who Alex Hormozy is, his warm traffic segment is huge. And so he's able to make a lot of money from it. But for most of you, including myself, that is not true. You might only have a couple of thousand of followers on Instagram or YouTube or Twitter, or maybe you've got no audience at all and you just rely on referrals. But the point is, you're very quickly going to cap this warm traffic segment out. And it's very slow to grow it because you're relying on social media algorithms showing your posts to the right people. You kind of become a slave to social media. This was me, okay? For the first 2.5 years of my agency, I was literally just posting 5 times a day on Twitter and LinkedIn, just fingers crossed that the right people would see my posts. And yes, we grew to about 50K a month, but it was very slow. It literally took 2.5 years. And then when we actually cracked cold traffic, you can see we scaled so much quicker because we started to tap into all of this segment of the market. So if you rely on warm traffic, you do tend to reach a ceiling pretty quickly. And the simple reason is because you cannot increase your sales velocity. You're only able to sign 2, 3, 4, 5 deals a month, and that probably won't outweigh your churn. If you have 15% churn monthly, let's say, which is pretty common, then you're going to get to the point where you are signing 2, 3 clients a month, but you're also losing 2, 3 clients a month, and that's how you stay at a plateau. Now, with cold traffic, this is where people are not buying your personality, but instead they are buying your offer because they don't know you, they don't like you, they don't trust you. The only thing that is going to stop them scrolling is whether you present them with a compelling offer, okay? Because that is the only thing that they can physically see. The nice thing about cold traffic as well is that it's virtually unlimited, okay? Obviously, depending on how big your market is, of course, but you can get significantly more eyeballs onto your offer than on warm traffic, and you can get them faster too. And fundamentally, with cold traffic, to some extent, you do control the impressions, the timing, and the volume. With paid ads, if you want to reach more people, you just spend more money. And even with cold email, of course, which is technically a method of cold traffic acquisition, you can just send more emails. So you get this level of control, okay? And that means that cold traffic is scalable to 200K a month with the right systems. But let's look at the different acquisition channels quickly. Now, you might be thinking, oh, this guy's totally biased, but I do think there is genuine truth here. So if we look at organic content, unfortunately, it is inconsistent by nature. Now, don't get me wrong. I love content. I'm posting content right now. I post content regularly on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm not a hypocrite, but organic content does not bring in the majority of my sales and my deals. 60 to 70% of the clients that I sign across my agency and my consulting business are from paid ads. Content, I really don't view it as its own channel. I view it as a horizontal layer that improves everything throughout your business. It shouldn't really be relied on as an acquisition channel because it's not controllable and it's not scalable. But you should still post content to improve your paid ads, to improve your hiring. Obviously, people know you, people want to work with you. That's a huge benefit of content, okay? But unfortunately, the algorithm tends to reward things like viral content, rage bait, low quality, short form stuff. Really in-depth business content is getting harder and harder to stand out in, especially because the barrier to entry with content is so low. Anyone can post a YouTube video, which means that it's becoming increasingly saturated. But the fundamental truth is with content, you just cannot control the impressions or the timing, and you cannot scale it. Okay, yes, you can post more, but that does not necessarily mean that you're going to get 2 or 3x the returns on content. So should you do it? Yes, but should you rely on it? Is it going to be the thing that scales you from 50K a month to 250K a month? No. Now, the next is cold outbound. Let's say like cold email, cold LinkedIn, okay, cold calling. It's becoming more spammy than ever, particularly because of AI. With AI, you can now do mass personalization at scale. So the stuff that used to make you stand out in the inbox and get you booked calls now just completely doesn't work. The space is constantly changing because of AI, which means pretty much every other week, there's a new strategy which works, and all of the strategies that you were using no longer work. And unless you're in a really niche market, which just doesn't get spammed with a lot of outbound, it's going to be extremely difficult for you to stand out. Niches like e-com, SaaS, and just generic B2B, it's impossible to make outbound work these days. Responses are continuing to decline, and even if you are running cold email right now and it's working, you should know that you should diversify, right? Cold email and cold outbound is not going to be where it is forever, and in my opinion, every single year it seems to get slightly worse and slightly worse. Google can just ban you, it can ban your inboxes, it can change its rules and its settings, which completely tanks deliverability. It's just not a very safe and secure platform to be relying on. So whilst it is a cold traffic method of acquisition and it is technically scalable, I would not be relying on it in 2026 because the competition is higher than ever. It's harder to stand out in the inbox, and it is fundamentally risky with the amount of tech battles and changes that happen to all the algorithms. Next, we have referrals. Now, referrals are awesome when they come, but they are entirely outside of your control. The amount of agencies I speak to who are still in 2026 just relying on predominantly referrals is crazy to me. Listen to me. If this is you, you have such a good product and such good service that your clients are literally sending you more clients. Think about what would happen if you just forced more eyeballs onto this offer that people love so much. Think about how much more money you would make. It's pretty obvious that referrals are not scalable. You can make a very profitable business out of referrals, but if you want to take business to the next level, okay, and if you want to grow, and again, this channel is really only for agency owners who want to grow, who want to scale, who want to hit multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, then referrals cannot be relied upon. They are too inconsistent. And then finally, we have ads, specifically meta ads. Now, ads are the best B2B traffic source in 2026, okay? Why? Very simple. Number one, you have control. You can control exactly almost exactly how many people see your ad. Now, of course, there's variations per your niche. Some niches will be more expensive to reach than others, but fundamentally, if you spend more, you reach more people, unlike organic content and unlike referrals. Number two, it is actually less saturated than content and outbound. The reason why is because there is a barrier to entry. You actually have to spend money on ads, which is a good thing. Any 14-year-old in their mum's basement can start sending cold emails because it's free. Any 14-year-old in their mum's basement can start posting content because it's free. But not everyone has the stones to spend money on ads, which means the barrier to entry is much higher. The third thing is it is consistent. Very typically, once you start getting winning ads, you are going to be generating, if you spend the same amount of money, the same amount of leads every single month. It's why the biggest businesses in the world use paid advertising, because it is predictable. Again, unlike organic content, which is going to ebb and flow based on how viral you go, essentially. And again, unlike referrals, which are by nature inconsistent. Meta ads, if you spend $10,000 on meta ads and it costs you $2,000 to get a client, broadly speaking, you're going to be signing 5 clients every month. And if you want that number to go up, you simply just spend more. And finally, the TAM is just absolutely massive. Everyone and their mother is on Facebook and is on Instagram. That is not true for certain niche organic content platforms. And so really you just have an absolutely ginormous audience size on ads. Now, furthermore, just very quickly, why do I think meta ads is better than any other ad platform? Now, I'm going to stop scribbling and really just speak to you down the lens here. I promise you, but if you are an agency owner in B2B, meta is the place you need to go. The reason being, it has the best targeting by a long shot. Okay, Facebook is an extremely advanced company. The amount of data they collect on you is honestly scary, and they have been around for the longest. Facebook ads was really the first platform-based advertising. They were kind of neck and neck with Google. However, they were really around for the longest, okay? And thirdly, just the amount of users and the engagement they have on their platforms is just so high, so they just really just know a lot about you, okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is it's going to be way cheaper than something like Google Ads, okay? Google Ads is extremely competitive because everyone is going after these certain search terms. Let's say you're an e-commerce agency and you are trying to rank on Google search for, I need an e-commerce agency. Think about how many agencies are going to be bidding for that, which means your cost per clicks are going to be like $50, $100. With Meta, you're not bidding on these keywords. You're just putting your ads in front of certain audiences, which makes it very affordable compared to Google Ads. Google Ads can definitely be something you expand to, but trust me when I say, do not even think about anything else other than Meta until you get to $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a day of ad spend profitably. And then if you're thinking about Reddit ads or Twitter ads or Pinterest ads, these platforms have only been around for a couple of years. Their targeting is nowhere near as sophisticated, okay? Even LinkedIn ads is the same. Their Meta is where you start, okay? It gets you the best targeting, it gets you the cheapest results, and it gets you the best lead quality. You're just going to have to trust me on that. Okay, so now we covered why you should run paid ads. Let's jump into crafting an offer that actually converts. So obviously, when you're running ads, you need an offer. That is what cold traffic is going to buy. If you just simply pitch, hey, we will manage your Google ads, that is not an offer. So the 4 components of every cold traffic offer: specific deliverables, a defined outcome, a clear timeline, and potentially some risk reversal. A risk reversal doesn't mean a guarantee, by the way. We'll get into that in a second. Now, here are the 4 proven offer types that I see work really well on paid ads. Now, the first is a setup offer. This is really good for agencies that have low budgets and are just looking to get started. Trust me when I say this, okay? A setup offer is really good to sell because you are positioning yourself against all of the other agencies in the space, and you're selling something for a one-time payment, okay? This means you're going to get more calls booked than if you sell a monthly retainer, because everyone is used to getting pitched a monthly retainer. People are not used to getting pitched a one-time setup. Now, the idea is you pitch them a one-time setup fee for $3,000, $4,000 to $6,000 on the front end, and you might deliver that setup over 60 to 90 days. I don't recommend trying to squeeze it into 30 days. That's not going to be enough time to get results. And then you try and convert them on the back end onto a lower monthly retainer of $1,500 to can be up to $5,000. This is great because you're going to get cash up front. It's an easy pitch, but you also have the potential to get a good LTV from the monthly retainer. Now, that being said, probably only 1 in 3 people are actually going to stay past the setup, and that is actually a good result because you're going to make money on the front end, which means you can acquire tons of clients profitably, reinvest, and then you just know that 1 in 3 are going to give you a 15, 20, or 30K LTV over however long they stay on the monthly retainer for. Now, I think this is an amazing place to start, okay? The reason why is because it is a easy pitch, which means the amount of booked calls you get and the amount of clients you get is going to be higher. The disadvantages of this, though, is that the LTV is going to be lower. Less people are going to get onto your monthly retainer than if you just sell a monthly retainer. However, when you're starting out with ads, your main goal, your main mission, your main priority is to get results. What do I mean by results? I'm going to show you in a second, but within Meta ads, we're going to get technical later, but within Meta ads, you're optimizing for something called a result, okay? I'm going to recommend to you in a second that you optimize around website schedules. In other words, booked sales calls. If you have less than 50 results, whatever it is that you're optimizing for, whether it is schedules or it's leads or whatever, Meta is going to be extremely difficult, okay? Things are going to be very inconsistent, very choppy. You get calls one week, you get nothing next week. And until we get data, until we get over at least 50 schedules inside of your Meta pixel, and again, if you don't know what that is, I'm going to explain it in a second, stuff is going to suck. And so what does that mean? We want to optimize at the beginning stage for an offer that is extremely easy to pitch, extremely easy to get people on a call for, and extremely easy to get them to buy. Because with that money, in addition to the results thing, we're also going to be able to reinvest, spend more, and get those results faster and kind of get out of this really awkward stage where you have less than 50 results inside of your pixel. So I do genuinely recommend people start here if it makes sense for what you sell. So, an example could be, hey, we will set up your Google ads for a one-time payment. This is the offer that I ran and made millions of dollars with, okay? It could be the same for Facebook ads. It could be the same for a bunch of other stuff. Now, another version of the setup offer is the sprint offer. This is kind of the same thing. It's just better framing for a quantity-based service, such as ad creatives, or maybe landing pages or advertorials if you're kind of going for a more volume approach here. Again, it's a one-time payment, but they are getting a defined quantity of deliverables as quickly as possible, typically over 60 or 90 days. Again, the goal here is either going to be to sell them another sprint after they've gotten that, because they should just need more of whatever it is that you're selling them all the time, or you can try and sell them into a monthly retainer again on the back end. Now, another way to position this is kind of building out a department for them. So this is where you kind of give them the systems and then you maybe help place someone into their agency or their business or whatever it is, their software company at the end of it, so that they have this department which they can continue to leverage, okay? Again, it's kind of just another version of this one-time payment thing. You can kind of spread out over more months, and so you kind of have a little bit more of a LTV there, but it can be quite difficult to execute. I only see a couple of people running this. And then finally, we have the free trial offer, okay? Now, this is a little bit different to the setup offer because typically you're not collecting as high cash upfront. You're typically collecting a smaller deposit upfront. You're running a service for 30 days. And then basically at the end of the 30 days, you're just going to credit that deposit into their retainer and just roll them straight into a retainer. Typically, you don't even need a call to be able to do this. Now, it's an extremely strong sales argument. However, for most of you, I would probably stay away from this because unfortunately, you're not going to be getting much cash up front, which just makes things pretty difficult. Okay, can work in certain markets. SaaS, typically free trials and pilot offers here work quite well. And again, the department build thing is kind of a little bit more complicated. I'm typically going to recommend some kind of a setup or a sprint offer for most of you. And then of course, we have the option to sell directly into a month-to-month retainer, okay? So this is where you just get on the call with them and, you just genuinely sell a monthly or a quarterly retainer. You typically want to lock in for 3 months unless you're charging huge retainers because, if you're only charging, let's say 3K a month, 4K a month, 4K a month is fine, but let's say if it's on the lower end and it's 3K a month and your CAC is 2K and then they dip after 1 month, you're going to kind of be in a tricky situation here because you have spent 2K to acquire the customer. They only pay you 3K, so you've only got 1K in margin, and then you've got to pay your delivery team and your sales team and stuff like that. So you could end up losing money on some clients. So make sure there's a bit of a lock-in. The benefit of obviously selling a month-to-month retainer versus any of these kind of more gimmicky offers is that you do have a much better chance of getting a really solid LTV. Now, offers to avoid are anything that does not result in the ability for you to collect cash on the first call. When we're running ads, we want to compress the cash collection cycle as quick as possible into the first 30 days, okay? Because that gives us the ability to go out and take a credit card where we can pay that credit card back over 30 days and scale. So that means that if you are less likely to collect cash quicker, it's not a great offer. And so that's the problem with free audit offers is you're typically getting people on who are quite low intent. They want to poke around, they want to nose around, they don't want to get free value, and then they don't end up buying. It just lengthens the sales cycle. It doesn't make sense to collect cash from them the first call because they are probably going to come in wanting this audit. And so it gets a lot of tire kickers. I really just don't like it at all. And then any kind of obviously offer that just doesn't result in you collecting some decent cash up front. We ideally want front end ROAS to be 1.5 to 2x, whatever our CAC is, because that's going to give us a good margin to reinvest and just be profitable and safe and all good. So when it comes to actually building out your offer, make sure you obviously know your target market. Make sure you have your core offer, which I just covered, one of those offers there. Make sure you really map out your deliverables. So create a long list of every single thing you're going to do for them. This is known as deliverable stacking. And you can take that and you can actually put it into your VSL, you can put it into your ads, and it just overwhelms the prospect with value and really makes them want your service. You obviously want to know the price. You may have multiple pricing tiers. For example, in my consulting company, we run ads to a product that has 3 tiers in it, and we sell whatever the best fit is. Obviously, a direct outcome. This is going to be very important when we are making the ads. The benefits of getting this outcome. So for example, if it is you're going to book them 20 calls a month or you're going to get them 100 leads a month, that's the direct outcome. And the benefits of this outcome is that you can scale to 100K a month, something like that. Okay, some differentiators. So what makes you different from your competition? This is really important. This is going to go in our ads as well. So maybe it's the fact that you hire the best talent from who are ex-Google employees, or you're doing that setup offer and it's a one-time payment, and that's a big differentiator. Or maybe you are like an ex-ecom brand owner or an ex-SaaS owner, and so you can relate to your audience. And then finally, qualification. Okay, you're not going to offer this to just anyone. What do your prospects have to have in order for you to offer this to them? And this is going to go into our funnel, because we're only going to let qualified people through to actually talk to us on a sales call. Real quick, guys, and then we'll get back to the video. If you are watching this and you're thinking, wow, this is a lot of information, this is cool, but I want someone to kind of hold my hand through this. I want someone to either really consult me on this because I'm so busy, I want someone to do this for me, then I'd love to talk to you about the Advertising Co. It is my consultancy/agency hybrid that helps other agencies do what we did at Paid House, which is scale predictably and consistently and profitably, exclusively with paid ads. If that interests you, I'd love to have a conversation with you. You can book a call using the first link in the description. Now back to the video. Okay, and before we leave the offer, the last thing, my friends, is the unit economics. Let me tell you a story. When I first started running ads, I got given this offer by someone, and they were like, this is a good offer for you to run. I basically, paid a ton of different coaches to learn what I know now, and obviously burnt loads of my money and went through trial and error to build a system that obviously gets us and our clients really good results. But initially I got told to sell this 3K offer. It was a setup offer, right? So the setup offer model still works. The problem was the price I sold it at. I sold it at 3K, and I was going into a niche, e-commerce, which is pretty competitive, pretty sophisticated, and pretty expensive to reach. This meant that my CAC was typically around 2 to 2.5K. The problem with this is if I'm paying this for every single customer and I'm only getting this back, but I then have a fulfillment team and I have a sales team as well, I'm actually losing money on every single sale I make. Regardless if they stay or not, I'm only probably going to make a lot of money in month 2 or month 3, which is not sustainable. At this stage, I didn't have tons of money in the bank, and I'm not a funded company. I've never taken out investor money. I'm bootstrapped, which means losing $500 to $1,000 on every single sale is pretty much the worst situation you can be in. So my friends, just calculate, what do you need to charge to get 1.5 to 2x ROAS in the first 30 days. Okay, if you can get this, you are going to be golden. Now, you can run at break even, you can run at a 1x ROAS if you want to. It's just very risky, and you really need to know what you're doing if you want to bring it down that low. Okay, if you bring it down, you're probably going to acquire more customers, but it's going to be a bit risky. So you want to be at this 1.5 to 2x. Okay, so what I really did is just simply take that 3K, and we experimented with 4K and 5K. And as soon as we did that, we were able to scale profitably again. We just simply nudged the price up a little bit, and it worked. So as I said, make sure your AOV is at least 1.5 to 2x your CAC, okay? And if you don't know what your CAC is, very simply, your CAC is the cost of acquiring a new client. So basically, if you think about all the costs, that's going to be your cost per book call, okay? If you know what your cost per book call is, so your CPBC, let's say that is $200. Let's say you spend $2,000 on ads, okay? So 2K on ads, that's going to get you 10 calls, okay? Let's just say, for example's sake, that your show rate isn't that great. Your show rate's only 50%. That means you get 5 live calls. And let's say your close rate is, 20%, which means you're closing 1 in 5 on live calls, which means you're closing 1 in 5 of these live calls, which is 1 client. And so that basically means you have to book 10 calls to sign 1 client. If it costs you $200 per call, that means you need to spend $2,000 on ads. So that would be your CAC in this case. And, in terms of what is a good CAC, it's going to entirely depend on the price of the product you sell, because obviously that will bring down close rate if you sell something that's really expensive, which is actually not a bad thing, by the way. And it will depend on your CPMs, because obviously how much it costs to get 1,000 people, that's what CPM means, how much it costs to get 1,000 people to view your ad will obviously inform what your cost per book call will be. If the traffic is cheaper, then that means you can reach more of it for the same amount of spend and theoretically get more booked call. And so, for example, niches that are pretty sophisticated and high level, for example, let's say you're going after 8-figure brand owners, the less of a niche there is, the more expensive it will be to reach. Okay. And the more competition as well, the more the CPMs will be higher. So, for example, if you're going after a niche which does 8 figures a year, there's not very many people in the world that do 8 figures a year, which means it's going to be more expensive to reach them. However, if you are advertising to, I don't know, anyone who has a corporate job and that's your niche and you're selling some kind of B2C offer, then your CPMs are probably going to be, I don't know, 1/10 of what they are, going after 8-figure e-com owners or 8-figure or like Series A SaaS companies or, extremely expensive niches. And so in general, if you're just starting out, you probably want to lower your criteria a little bit. Let's say you maybe only want to go for, 7-figure companies. That means there's going to be way more of them, which means your CPM is going to be a bit lower and your cost per call is going to be lower too. Okay, which is going to mean your CAC is lower, but obviously you can't charge the prices to 7-figure brands that you can charge to 8-figure brands. Okay, so you may well get a better ROAS, which is return on ad spend, okay, which we're going to go through in a second, doing this than this. It's not just a game of who can get the lowest CAC, because you can probably get a 1K CAC selling a 2K offer. Doesn't mean you're making much money. The only thing that matters is really ROAS. Now, next we have the lifetime value. So without bogging you guys down too much, I look at two things. So we have front end ROAS, which is the money you make on the sale within the first 30 days. And then you have the back end ROAS, which is the money that you make on the client's entire lifetime value. Now, if you have a good lifetime value with an agency, it's not uncommon to see a back end ROAS of like 10x. Let's say your LTV is 20 to 30K, which it should be if you have a good product. And let's say your CAC is 2 to 3K, which it should be if you execute this correctly. That means you're going to have a 10x return on your ad spend. Very difficult to get this in e-commerce, in info, in other business models, right? That kind of a ROAS on ads. But because with agencies, you have high ticket recurring payments every single month, it's very easy to stack up a high ROAS, which is really cool. And that means things are going to be very profitable. It just will take you a bit of time, obviously, to get to this 10x ROAS because, those high ticket recurring payments have to occur once a month. And obviously, let's say your LTV is 12 months. You're not going to realize that full return on your ad spend for another 12 months, which is fine. Just means you have to understand that and factor that into your cash flow. Now, of course, if you want to be really aggressive, what you'd say is, okay, I know that my back end ROAS is, going to be 10x. So let's drive this front end ROAS down to like a 0.5. Let's lose money aggressively on customers. But we could do that because we know we're going to make the money back over time. Okay, you can do that if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank in cash and you want to take a big risk. This actually would make sense. Okay, but for most of you watching this who like money up front and like money in their pockets and like stacking their cash every time they sign a customer and to get paid to sign a customer, by the way, this is what's happening here. You are making money when you sign a customer. Then I would really optimize for this. This is what I do and this is what I recommend my clients do too. Now, the next thing is lifetime gross profit. Okay, so typically the rule is you want to have a 3x CAC to LTGP. Okay, which is obviously we cover here. So that means basically, obviously LTGP is lifetime gross profits. That's different to lifetime value, which is just the revenue factor. This is gross profit. Okay, so obviously you guys are going to have varying different gross profit levels. I mean, I try and optimize for an 80% gross profit where I can. And by the way, gross profit is basically the revenue minus the specific cost of delivering the service. So, your delivery team, really, your account managers and your designers or developers or whatever it is. If you have a sales team, you should factor that into your CAC in this situation. So let's say your CAC is 2K and you sell a 5K offer, which you give 10% commission to your sales rep. So that actually makes your true CAC 2.5K to acquire the customer. And of course, you could even go further and include the software that you have to use for ads into this CAC equation. But I don't ever go that far. I think I just try and I categorize software in a different point entirely. And then let's say this 5K offer, the people stay for 3 months, okay, which wouldn't be a great outcome, but let's just say they stay for 3 months. So they pay you 15K in revenue. And if you have a 50% gross profit margin on that, then you would be making 7.5K in gross profit, which of course would be a 3x of your CAC. And so if you're at least doing a 3x of your CAC, that's good. Now, you should probably be a little bit higher than this, to be honest with you. But if you're doing at least this, then obviously you have a money printing machine. I think it's honestly reasonable to target a 6x, and a lot of my clients see this, but just make sure you're above a 3x. Obviously, in this example, when I was selling a 2K for a 3K offer, and a lot of people were leaving after paying for that 3K offer because it was a setup offer, I was far below this. Okay, so again, this whole channel, this whole video is about me teaching you the mistakes that I've made so that you don't make them and you make more money than I did. Cool. Okay, so we've covered offer. Now let's jump into messaging. Okay, so again, don't click off. I know messaging sounds vaguely boring, but stay with me here. Messaging is really, really important. So once we've just defined our ICP and our offer, you want to have a couple of things. So number one is obviously the ICP. Okay, so break this down even further. Look at your last 5, 10, or 20 customers. What gender are they? What age are they? What, outcomes do they want? What are they scared of? Learn everything that you can from your customers. Take your sales calls and your client calls, throw them into ChatGPT and ask it some of these questions, because we are going to use this in our targeting when we get to the ads manager level. The next is the propaganda. So what is your big idea? Okay, this is kind of the thing that, will just be very obvious in your ads, in your content, in everything. So my propaganda for my consultant company is that you need to run paid ads. Otherwise your life is going to suck, something like that, right? But yours is obviously going to be different. Okay. And then the next is problems, circumstances, and outcomes. Okay. So once you have number 1 and number 2 sorted, you want to go back to ChatGPT where you've thrown all your sales calls and your client calls in from the last few months. And you want to ask it, okay, what are the problems that my clients were experiencing before they came to me? What were the circumstances that they were in? And what were the outcomes that they wanted? So a problem might be, oh, I am really worried about the fact that I'm over-relying on one ad channel or one acquisition channel. That is a problem, okay? They are at high levels of risk because they are over-reliant on some channels. The circumstance might be that they are trying to exit their company, and that is the circumstance that a lot of your clients may be in. For example, they are pursuing some kind of an exit. They are, let's say, experiencing key man risk, so they are doing everything in their business. And then an outcome could be that they, sell their company for $100 million. Just an example. So there's no hard rule to how many of these you should make. I typically sit down and really write 30 total. To be honest with you, I write 10 problems, 10 circumstances, 10 outcomes. Then the next thing to focus on is language. What's even more important, okay, in this day and age than manual targeting within your ads is just the language that you use. Okay, so the way that broad targeting works these days, and again, we're going to get into the technicalities of Meta in a second, is that it will scan your entire ad, it will transcribe it, and it will use what you are saying to inform who it targets. So if you are using the language of your ICP, so if you're targeting e-commerce brand owners, you're using words like ROAS, CPA, all of that stuff, you are going to not only more effectively target those people, but you are just going to speak their language. They are going to resonate with what you are saying, and they're going to feel familiar to you. It's all about familiarity bias. Another example of that is if you are a man in the ad, Meta is going to detect that and show your ad to more men because it is going to resonate more with them, versus if you are a woman, it is going to scan that and show you to more women. So familiarity bias is kind of a huge thing when it comes to advertising. The next thing you should think about is, what is your one big question? Okay, so it kind of ties back to the one big idea, but what is the one biggest objection that you get on all your sales calls and all your messaging that if you answer that, you will be able to make everything a no-brainer? So again, for example, for us, people see ads as a big risk and that they're super expensive and complicated. But if you just explain the maths to them, that if they just spend $3,000 a month on ads for as little as 3 months, it's very likely that they will acquire somewhere in the realm of 4 to 5 clients. And if they have an LTV of, say, $20,000, that 9K could turn into $80,000 to $100,000. So you should kind of take that and apply that into your market. Then finally, you want to take the problem, circumstances, and outcomes and start to narrow them down. So there's no magic number here, but these are going to be your ads. Okay, these angles are going to turn into your first batch of ads. And even if you're running ads right now, I still recommend that you go through this process and test my method to see if it works better than what you're doing right now. So it doesn't have to be 25, it can be 20, it can be 15, but after Andromeda, which is Meta's most recent update, the more creative variation we have within an ad set, the better it performs. And what Andromeda is this super complex AI system that basically takes, all of these jumbled up creatives that you have in an ad set with all of these different buying reasons, outcomes, problems, and circumstances, and orders them up, and then it basically matches them to the right people, okay, based on what you're saying. So, it will literally just know everything about you. It will know that you have certain problems, and it will say, okay, let's say this ad angle here, that's what this is meant to represent is a problem. Oh, this person has a problem. Let's show them this ad. Let's serve them this ad. Okay, this is a benefit. Oh, we know this person's trying to exit their company for $100 million. Let's show them this ad. Okay, this is a bit more of a sort of circumstance. Oh, we know this person is in this circumstance because of their fucking search history or something. Let's show them this ad. So that's kind of how Andromeda works. And so really the more different angles you have within an ad set, okay, within reason, the better your ad set's going to perform. So that's why I like to start with, 15 to 25 ad angles, sometimes as low as 10 is fine, but just make sure it's an even split of problems, circumstances, and outcomes so we can get a nice distribution. Okay, the next thing that we want to cover is actually creating the ads. We have the offer, we know the messaging we're going to use in the ads, now let's actually script them out. So one rule that I like to follow is the 30-30-30-10 creative diversification rule. I didn't come up with this, by the way, but it does work really well. This is where you mix up your ads between direct offer ads, value education ads, social proof ads, and then 10% of the ads that you make are just completely wild experiments, super off the cuff, not really following a traditional script at all. But sometimes these wild cards just work so well. This might be where you are like filming a Tai Lopez style ad where you're just rambling to your phone, walking around outside. And sometimes that performs better than any of the other clear-cut stuff. So in terms of the ad types that you want to make, the first are direct talking head to the camera ads. This is where you're typically talking to the camera for sort of 60 to 90 seconds. It can be as low as 30, it can be longer, but most of these are going to fall within 60 to 90 seconds. You're following a very sort of kind of clear-cut script, which I'll break down for you in a second. And then they can be different formats. They can be vertical, 9:16. They can be 4:5. You can test having banners on the top of the ads. This works really well sometimes for certain niches. And they can be landscape as well. I recommend testing a wide variety of different formats and different styles and different editing styles too with this as well. You can have simple edits where it's just, no music, just subtitles and some cuts. Or you can have really dramatic overlays and high-level editing and fast-paced editing. There's no right or wrong answer. A lot of people come and ask me, oh, hey, should I film ads in a podcast studio? Oh, what editing should I have? Just test, man. Just test. Literally, you could be in the exact same niche as someone else, and one person will see results with super polished ads, and another person will see results with super shaky camera ads. There may be a bit of relevance in terms of if you're targeting a sophisticated niche, you probably want to be in a sophisticated environment with a nice, outfit on and a nice background, but that's not always true. Sometimes having the kind of ugly style ad will break the mold. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you which of these ads to film and in which format because I don't know. Different stuff is going to work for different people. So just test. The next is kind of UGC style ads. So this is where it's a little bit more rough around the edges, obviously UGC means that you are using a user generated content person. So that can be you, and user generated content is basically meant to look sort of rough around the edges. You're just kind of, filming yourself with an iPhone and it's kind of shaky and stuff like that. But typically when people say UGC, they mean using a specific UGC actor, which you can also do. And this is good because it trials different faces. It might be that your face and your person just does not resonate with your target market, right? Especially if they're older than you or they're typically women or whatever, like stuff like that. That makes more sense than for you to go and actually find one of these UGC actors. You can find them very easily on Twitter or LinkedIn or Upwork or Fiverr, and they're typically going to charge you sort of $30 to $50 per video. But this is typically, handheld with iPhone, rough lighting, kind of blends with the organic feed content. That's the benefit of it. Most people, when they're making organic content, it kind of looks something like this. And so if you have an ad that looks like this, it's going to blend in more. And the general rule of thumb here, guys, is that you kind of want to make ads that look like content these days. If the ads are as good as content, then the platform, Facebook, is getting what it wants. Ideally, Meta doesn't want to be showing ads, of course, but it has to make money because typically speaking, ads suck, right? No one likes getting ads. They want to get to the good stuff, which is the content. But think about this. If your ads are as good or even better than other people's organic content and people, spend a lot of time on them, watch them all the way through, read the captions, dwell on them, this is called dwell time, for a long period of time, then Meta is going to reward you out the wazoo. It's going to give you super cheap CPMs, super cheap cost per book calls. It's just going to go great. And so that's kind of the theory behind UGC ads. Same thing with podcast ads. Podcast ads work so well because it feels like organic content. It feels like you're watching a snippet of someone's podcast. And because, the person isn't looking at you, it just kind of draws you in a little bit more. When you are sort of talking straight to the camera, it can feel a little bit like, I'm getting pitched here. But the podcast ads, it's just very disarming. Okay, so I really like these. I tested a couple of these for Paid House. They went really, really well. Definitely something that you should try. The only tricky thing is you have to have like a professional looking setup. And you should also use a bit of a softer CTA. It doesn't really make sense if you suddenly turn to the camera at the end of the ad and start pitching people. people, it kind of has to sound like a podcast. The next are static ads. Now, the general rule of thumb here is that, video ads are going to be your best performers. So if we use this sort of axis as the y-axis being performer, or like performance, and the x-axis being, I don't know, whatever. Videos are going to be up here as your best performers, but they'll also be down here as your worst performers, and they'll flop. Statics tend to be in the middle. They're consistently decent, but your best ads will almost always be videos, and I've observed that in every single account. So you should definitely have statics running just to hold you down. But the problem with statics with high-ticket offers is that they struggle to get enough information across. With a talking head ad, I have 90 seconds with someone to explain the offer to them so that they are pre-sold and they get to the sales call knowing everything that they need to know. With a static ad, it's kind of hard to cram them all into one small square, and so this can lead sometimes to slightly lower lead quality. However, the flip side, statics are easily consumed within a couple of seconds, and so the friction goes down, typically meaning your CTR is going to be much higher on statics than it is on video. Video, your CTR might be 1 to 2%. Statics, you're typically looking at 3%, 4%. So definitely test some statics. Typically, what I would recommend is that you start with videos, you test through videos, and then when you find a really good angle on videos, bring it over to statics and start testing statics that way. Finally, there's also some B-roll ads that you can use. So this is where you have kind of, you're filming something in the background, like someone walking on a beach, and you have, a bunch of text over it. That is a good example of a B-roll ad. They work pretty well. Not something that I test extensively. I'm mostly focused on testing videos and statics. So when it comes to scripting the video ads, we should have some problem-based angles, some circumstance-based angles, and some outcome-based angles, okay? Now, I observed when I was making ads for Paid House that outcome-based angles and hooks worked way better than anything else. And if you are advertising to a rich market, typically, sure, they have problems, but their problems aren't that bad. And it's really more about desire. But I often find in things like B2C, where you're advertising to consumers or local business, so slightly, I guess, quote unquote, less affluent B2B markets, problems are going to be very effective because these guys have serious issues. They want to feed their family. There's lots of urgency and stuff like that. So I would just keep that in mind. And again, circumstances are kind of middle of the road. They work decently well. But again, typically it's going to be either an outcome or a problem that really performs the best. So step one, the hook is everything. Obviously, you've heard this before, but how do you actually make a hook? Now, you better listen to this because really, you lose so many people at the stage of the hook. Our goal is a 20% hook rate, okay? And a hook is basically anyone who watches past the first 3 seconds. If your hook is not good, it will not get the right people in and it will not keep them watching. So it's almost like you should really just test hooks. When you're first testing ads, I recommend that you honestly test 10 hooks and 1 body. And until you find the right hook, don't even bother testing a different body. So long as the body follows the format that I'm going to show you in a second, I would really just focus on testing hooks. So we follow something called the ABC hook framework. So firstly, audience. Who is this for? So if you're a coach, if you're an e-com brand owner, if you're a software business, we really want to target the audience because this is going to drag in the people that we want and prevent the people that we don't want. It's also going to help Meta with its targeting so that we actually get the right people. There is nothing worse than us getting people who are not in our ICP, people who we are not trying to sell, watching our full ad. Because if these people respond really well to our ad and they watch it all the way through and they love it, Meta's going to show it to more of those people. Okay. So that's why we want to repel those people that we don't want by specifying the niche that we're going after and even specifying the revenue level that we're after. The next is a benefit or obviously a problem or a circumstance. So if you're a coach at 20K a month, then I'll help you book 20 to 30 calls. Or maybe it's like, hey, if you're a coach at 20K a month and you are not scaling right now and life sucks, that would obviously be a problem, then listen to this. And then finally, curiosity. So you need to weave some curiosity into this. So one thing that I did really well in one of my hooks, one of my best hooks ever, I'll just give it to you, is, hey, if you're an e-com brand owner, which obviously ties back to the audience. And then I say, what if you could get a 4x ROAS? 4x ROAS is a great outcome for an e-com brand owner. So that's obviously a clear benefit. And then I said, without touching Facebook ads, which is interesting. It's like, oh, I thought everyone had to run Facebook ads. This is really interesting. This is curious. So this is why this hook worked so well, in my opinion. It had all 3 of these things. Finally, the ad body. Okay, so we have different types of ad bodies that we can leverage. The one that I recommend that you start with is the direct offer, direct body. The reason for this is because your market is like a funnel. And at the bottom, there is going to be 2 to 3% of people that are just ready to buy. Okay, if we judge the funnel by sort of, intent levels. This is like sort of low intent. I mean, you can also do awareness stages as well, but this is like low intent to high intent. There's always going to be 2 to 3% of people that like, oh, I need a Google Ads agency. Oh, I need to be doing SEO. Oh, I need to be doing AI. Okay. And so when you show a direct offer ad to these people, they're going to lap it up. They're going to buy. It's going to be the easiest sale of your life. And so my philosophy is, until we really tapped this out, which is going to be typically maybe $500 to $1,000 a day of spend, maybe even more, I wouldn't test anything else. I know I did say at the start of this, 30, 30, 30, 10, but at least for your first batch, definitely use this. And until you've found at least one winner, keep doing this, because the others are going to be harder to make work than this. So let me read you through the direct body. So the first thing, once we've done the hook, we get straight into the offer. So let's say, hey, if you're an e-commerce brand owner and you want to get a 4x ROAS without relying on meta ads, listen to this. Okay, that's the hook. And then the body would be, me and my team will do da for you. So we get straight into the offer so that you can, scale to $1 million a month and ultimately have, benefit, right? So less reliance on, I don't know, Facebook ads, more chance of exiting your business, more time with your family. We can throw in a belief break here as well. Most brand owners think the only way to scale is with Facebook ads, and then we get into our solution, which is our unique mechanism. Okay, this is another really important thing that I haven't touched on quite so much. This kind of ties back to the differentiator thing, but you really need to have a unique mechanism. What is your system? Whatever your agency's name is, slap on the system. For us, it was like the paid house system. That is your unique mechanism. That is why you are different. You do things differently to all other agencies, and that is why it works. Okay, so you explain that there in the ad. You start dropping proof and authority, just like we did for this client, and this client. If there's some kind of topical thing that's happening in the niche, it can work quite well to put that in the ad. For example, in 2026, this thing doesn't work. You've got to do our mechanism. And then you pretty much want to jump into the CTA, which really is recapping the ad and then giving them a clear next step, which would sound something like this. So if you're an e-com brand owner doing 30K a month and you want to stop relying on Facebook ads and scale with our unique mechanism, click the link below, watch the video on the next page, and book a call. There you go. Textbook CTA. Now, the false solution body is really interesting because this is where you position yourself again against the market. You basically want to take a kind of belief that everyone in your niche has and go against it. So for example, something like, hey, if you're struggling to grow your business, it's not because you're not spending enough on ads. Let's say you're selling a content offer, right? And by the way, I'm totally comfortable with like bashing ads because this is the game. Whatever you're selling, you have to bash something, right? If you're out here selling a cold email offer, you're going to try and bash ads, right? You're going to say, oh, ads are expensive. Cold emails, super cheap. So everything can be demonized. Everything in life has pros and cons. So that's kind of why I'm doing this. But for example, let's say you're selling an organic content offer. You would say, hey, if you're struggling with scaling your business, it's not because you're not spending enough on ads. The way to fix it is definitely not increasing your Facebook ad spend. The way to fix it is actually to get more followers who know, like, and trust you into your network, right? Think about it. It would work because, people who watch your content every single day are going to be so much warmer than people who come through ads. Also, like, content is taking off right now, thousands of users on TikTok, blah, 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 right? That would be example of false solution. The next is a grand narrative. So for example, everyone is using AI. So you would typically talk about, a big market trend. You'd say some AI statistics, after your hook. AI is growing by 1,000% every single year. If you want to scale your business, you need to, do this now. Here's our offer. Here's who we've helped. It's all about urgency and something that is topical right now. Then we have the situation identifier body. This is really good. I see a lot of infopreneurs, people who are selling courses, do this now because a lot of people are burned out in the info space from being sold courses. And so what is a better approach is to really just get to the bottom of what your prospect is struggling. So for example, it would be, hey, if you're an agency owner and, you are signing 5 clients a month right now, but you are losing 2 or 3 clients a month and you want to scale to, 100K a month, like literally describing exactly what their situation is to a stalkerish level. Okay. You want to logically break their belief and explain why they're doing what they're doing right now is not working. And then you again want to jump into proof, authority, trust, introduce a soft offer here, explain the mechanism, and then make a CTA. Again, this is a really good one if your market is quite burned and, sick of getting pitched. This can work quite well. It's quite disarming. And then finally, the authority body. So if you are, someone who has worked with really big names, let's say you've worked with, Huel, and you've worked with, I don't know, like AG1, Like I see a certain agency owner doing this. He's worked with some really big names, and so he just leads with those names. Like he says his hook, and he's just like, we've worked with Hugh, we're the best in the space. We work with Hugh, AG1, blah 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 blah, and that's gonna grab attention, right? Big names, people know these names. It's like, well, this guy's worked with these people. Okay, he must be good. That's why this works. Okay, so it's probably not going to be applicable for too many people watching this. You really have to have worked with people who are extremely well known in your space. The coaching equivalent is like, oh, I've worked with Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi. That's another example of that. And then once you've given those that authority and that proof, you jump into the offer, you explain the mechanism, and you again go to the CTA. So those are the kind of bodies that I typically see in the space. As I said, though, I think you should really start with trying to just crack the direct offer body. And then once you've cracked that, once you've got a winner there, you can expand into the rest. Just quickly as well, to hit on a concept, one thing I want you to understand is hit rate. So basically, in paid ads, you have something called a hit rate. The average hit rate right now, I just got a little screenshot, is 8.95%. Typically, I say 10% to clients is what the hit rate is going to be. It could be higher, it could be lower. But that means that you're going to have to test 10 ads statistically to get a winner. That's not just 10 hooks in one body. That is 10 completely different bodies. And typically per batch, and I'm going to talk about how you launch the ads in a second, but we launch in batches. So per batch, you want to give that 5 to 7 days of ad spend before killing it, which means that in a worst case scenario, if you get really unlucky, it can take 50 to 70 days, i.e. 10 tests to find a winning ad. But the thing is, when you get a winning ad, everything changes. Everything in ads is about you're one ad away. That's what I say a lot of the time. Because if you just get that winning ad, that ad can spend $20, $30, $50, $100,000 profitably and bring you in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So I just want you to understand, you need to put in time into this. You need to be prepared to spend $2-3 grand a month for a couple of months. That being said, when I first launched ads, my first ad set was a winner. I had an ad in that was a winner. It got tons of calls. Obviously, we had issues with the offer unit economics, which we had to fix. But in terms of booking calls, we cracked it right away, which meant I got a hit on my first ever test. So again, it's just about distribution and maths. So if you're curious on how to actually drop the offer in the ads, this is the kind of way we do it. So firstly, a clear transition. So here's what I want to do for you. It's got to be super clear. You want to talk about why the offer is different, what the type of offer it is. It's a setup offer, it's a recurring offer. Like, what is it? Exactly what you'll do for the ICP and how it links back to what they want. And again, making sure you include that unique mechanism close to the point where you're talking about the offer, how you specifically get the result. And ideally, you're bashing a false solution or a false mechanism, something that they have tried before that has failed them. You can kind of position yourself against that. And finally, with the CTA, as I said, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but 99% of the time, you pretty much want to say, so if you're ready to stop, pain or problem and start achieving a desired outcome, and you want to get our deliverables, our offer, click the learn more button below and watch the video on the next page, and then book in a free call with me. And you can also go into sort of selling the call. If you're seeing quite low intent, really sell why the call is going to be so good. And by low intent, that's typically going to be reflected in a low CTR. And then finally, just tying it all together. So this is my best ever ad. This is a kind of a rough transcript of it, but this ad spent well over $70,000 and probably made me, $700,000 at least in revenue back. So as I said, it went something like this. What if you could get a 4x ROAS on cold traffic without touching meta ads? Okay. So again, benefit, curiosity, great. I've worked with over 100 different e-commerce brands with an average ROAS of 5.6x exclusively using Google Ads. Cool. Okay, what is this? Well, this is an authority statement, and it's also somewhat unique mechanism. Okay, so if you're selling a specific service, you do really want to introduce the fact that this offer in this ad is about that service. Okay, if I didn't mention Google Ads here, it would have been kind of unclear what I was doing. So I made it very clear what our mechanism of getting this ROAS of 5.6x, how we get that. And then the next, this is an objection handle. And no, that doesn't include branded search. Just for those of you who don't know, like within Google Ads, branded search is not a good thing. It means that you're not acquiring new customers. You're just going after customers that already know about your brand. So we handle that objection straight away because, for a lot of skeptical, sophisticated buyers, they're going to think, but what about this? And so if you can tackle that objection they have in their mind straight away, you're going to be able to, again, hook them in. And so this is just the other part of the objection handle, but then boom. So here's my offer to you. I get straight into it. This is pretty much within the first 10 seconds of the ad, I drop the offer. I will set up your entire Google Ads account for a one-time payment. Okay, so this is when we were running the setup offer. Very compelling. And then we do deliverable stacking. So that includes search campaigns, performance max campaigns, shopping campaigns, even YouTube Shorts ads. You got to make it so clear that this is a done for you offer. Hey, we're going to do all of these different things for you, like super valuable. So deliverable stacking, marketing. And then again, another objection handle. The best part about this is that I'm not an agency. It's just me working on the account. A little bit of a white lie here, not gonna lie, gents. But at that stage, the team was a lot smaller, so I thought I could get away with it. And then we jump into proof. Okay, so meaning when I get results like this for this brand, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we just have the proof right here. And again, we restate the offer. You're going to get the exact same strategies completely done for you for a one-time payment. Now, we also introduce urgency here. I'm only going to do this for a couple of brands because I usually charge a retainer. Again, positioning the retainer against the one-time payment. So this is introducing urgency, why they need to click now, why they need to book a call now, why they need to buy now. Now, I could have very easily just cut the CTA here. But if you want the entire setup in your own account, all for a one-time payment, then click learn more button below, input your information, and watch the video. So this is the CTA. I could have very easily ended the ad here, but for whatever reason, I did a much longer CTA, and that seemed to work. So again, this could have been a pretty nice short and sweet 60-second ad, but it ended up being, I think, around 90 seconds because I had this sort of extra long CTA here. After you're done watching, you can book a call with me. Now, this is only for e-com brands doing 30K a month or more right now. So up until this point, I haven't qualified on revenue. And so potentially this was a reason why the ads work so well because I really just drilled in, hey, you have to be this level of ICP. So if you below that, please ignore this ad because this offer is not for you. And then again, another CTA. So it's a very, very long CTA section. About a third of the ad is a damn CTA. But this ad got a 2% click-through rate, which is really good for a video ad. So, and that's obviously why it works so well. So again, maybe, having a longer CTA is something that you should consider testing too. Okay, finally, ladies and gents, once you have scripted out your ads, it is time to film. Okay, so what do I recommend that you get? I recommend that you get a good microphone. I personally use a Shure microphone. Now, I'm not going to give you the exact links to all these things because I don't want to just litter my description with a bunch of Amazon links, but you can go and search them up, and I give my private clients access to all of the equipment that I use. We use a specific softbox light. I personally film with a Sony ZV-E10, and I use a Sigma 16mm lens. And then we use Elgato products like the Elgato Cam Link, which essentially just means that instead of having to run around and click record on the camera and then run back and then sit down and you're not really sure if you're in frame, but you're just going to cross your fingers and hope you are, you can actually just use this Cam Link thing to connect your camera directly to your laptop, and you can see exactly what your camera is looking at on the screen. So you can just simply sit in your chair, click record, say the ad without having to move. So I just really like that. A teleprompter, guys, please, if you're thinking about investing $9,000 into ads over the next 3 months, which you kind of need to, $100 a day, as we're going to get to, is somewhat the minimum. But nonetheless, if you're going to invest $9,000, add an extra $200 onto that to get a teleprompter, because Jesus Christ, having a teleprompter, it makes it so easy to just read the ads on a doc. If you don't have a teleprompter, what you got to do is you got to have the doc on your computer, your camera's there, you got to read a line, look up, read a line, look up, read a line, look up. It genuinely takes twice as long as having a teleprompter right here with a document that I can just read whilst looking at the camera. Okay, so very worth it. Obviously, you're going to need a tripod to put the camera on, and then you've got the camera itself. So that is the setup that I have. And then obviously I have a computer in front of me here, which is obviously connecting to all these things. But roughly speaking, that is the flow that I use. And then I use, a recording software like OBS or Teller to kind of tie all these things together and operate the whole thing. Okay, ladies and gents, now we are going to get into the account setup and optimization. Okay, so let's jump in to the TAM principle. Now, before you attempt to set up and start running your first ad, just make sure that your TAM is at least over 10,000 people. Okay, so obviously we've been through a lot of audience ICP stuff already, but I just want to stop you here. If you have a really niche audience of under 10,000 people, 9-figure e-com brand owners, I imagine there's only 10,000 of those in the world, and you only work with 9-figure brand owners, ads, they're going to be tough. You got to stick to networking, my friends, or dancing on TikTok or something, So again, the goal here is to be as broad as we can within our niche, okay? And just work with yourself here, I speak to a lot of agency owners who are just like, we only work with Series B funded software companies. It's like, okay, that's cool, man. But if you want to have, a nice recurring factory element, consistent element to your business, which you're only going to be able to get with ads, you can work with those Series B companies, but build an offer for a Series A or a seed stage company. This is just a software example, but this can apply to anything else. If you only work with 8-figure revenue companies, build an offer for 7-figure revenue companies and sell that. I really do recommend that you have a suite of offers, not too many, 2 to 3 different offers, and you at least have one offer for slightly lower revenue people, so you can just maximize the amount of cash collection that you get from these ads, because you're going to get a wide variety of people. All right, you're going to get people coming through that do $1 million a month. Okay, you will get those people, especially if you optimize towards those people. But you're also going to get people on the lower end doing $50K a month. All right, you can of course just reject those people and go all in on these people, and that's a perfectly valid strategy. But you can also still sell these people with a lower tier kit offer. All right, so I would just take a second to consider that. But let's jump in. So what do we do? Well, firstly, and this is conceptual, I'm going to get into the practical stuff in a second. Firstly, we use broad targeting. Okay, so big concept here. Within Facebook, you used to have to create a campaign, create an ad set. Within the ad set, target. What does that mean? Interests. Business admin owners, Shopify store owners, people who are interested in this software, people who are interested in this activity outside. And you create this interest stack of 10 to 20 interests, and that would be how you would get Meta to go after people, okay? Or you would use a lookalike audience where you download your emails and Meta creates a lookalike from them. All of that is not necessarily out the window, but we don't use it anymore. Unless you have tested broad targeting to the nth degree and it's still not working with it for you, and at that point we can test interests, you want to go with broad. Why? 2 reasons. Firstly, it's better. Like, Meta literally knows so much about you and has invested billions of dollars into its targeting algorithm that it will just do a better job than you of knowing who to show your ad to. Okay, so that's the first thing. You'll just get better results. The second thing is it also eliminates an additional variable for you to test. If you right now you have to test your ad creatives, your landing page, your VSL, your sales process, your pre-call, like there's a lot of variables in that. Another one, like to add another one, which is like as big as targeting, is pretty exhausting. So it's very effective to be able to just remove that variable. And thankfully you can, because broad targeting is so effective. The next thing is we like to use ABOs. Now, I'm not against CBOs. You can definitely make CBOs work. However, the thing about ABOs is that you can ensure that you can test your creatives. What do I mean by that? Well, firstly, you only want to have one campaign, all right? For the most part, you really only want to have one campaign. Why? Well, if you have multiple campaigns, you're going to really be fragmenting your budget and fragmenting your data. A lot of data is held at the campaign level. Unless you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a week or a month, maybe, it starts to make sense to have different campaigns for different funnels that you're running, because you probably have multiple funnels at that point. So like a low ticket funnel versus a call funnel. But most of you here, we're going to be running a VSL call funnel, which I'm going to get into in a second. Haven't even touched on the funnel yet. And so that means we're only going to need one campaign, in my opinion. Even different country targeting, I would do that at the ad set level now. So one campaign, all data in one place. Okay, within the campaign though, multiple different ad sets. Okay, we want, every time we film a batch of ads, 5, 10, 15 ads, those ads are typically going to be, within I guess, quite similar to each other, right? So for example, I'm going to sit down here and film a talking head ad. Yes, I'm going to have different angles, different hooks and stuff like that, but it kind of looks the same, versus I'm going to go and get this girl over there to film an iPhone video in the park, right? Kind of a different thing. We want that in a different ad set. It's going to reach different people. It's a different style of ad that will reach different people. Again, if we're doing direct body versus authority or belief break, those are very different things. We would want them in different ad sets. Why? Because with an ABO, the targeting is done at the ad set level. So that's why we would want to split it up like that. So what I would do is I have one campaign, and then as I'm going to get into a second, multiple different ad sets. Okay. The reason that this is effective is because with an ABO means ad set budget optimization. Okay. With ABO, you control the budget at the ad set level. With a CBO, you don't. You control the budget at the campaign level, which means you can have as many ad sets in here as you want, but Meta is going to choose itself where to put the budget, which means you can just film a banging new batch of ads, launch them in the CBO, and Meta's spending all the budget over here. It's just going to ignore that ad set because it just thinks, oh, this is rubbish. Okay. Look, Meta's an extremely smart, algorithm, but if you've just filmed a new batch of ads and you have reason to think that they are good, you should force Meta to spend on them and test it, right? Similarly, you're testing so many different things at this stage, not just creative, but also maybe location. Maybe you want to target UK versus US. Again, if you just throw that into a CBO, Meta's just going to probably ignore, one of the countries and just spend all the money on the other one. And the thing is, we're trying to test to a state of statistical significance. We want to get at least 100 clicks on our ad set before we judge it. If we don't do an ABO, we're not going to be able to get to that point of statistical significance. We won't be able to judge whether the ad set is effective or not ourselves. We're just going to be relying on whatever Meta is saying. So I know that was a lot of words, but that's why I like ABO. You can force a test. Okay, now, that being said, if you want to post all your trust in Meta and just believe it is all-knowing and all-saying, then you can just use a CBO. That's fine. What I don't think is optional now, though, is sort of 10 to 15 to 20 creatives per ad set. Okay, gone are the days where you would basically just sit down, film 5 hooks, film a body, get your editor to stitch the 5 hooks to the body, and it's a done deal. You just throw it out into ad set. It's not good enough. You need to film unique ads now. What do I mean by that? So you're still going to have the 10 hooks and 1 body thing, but you're going to film 1 hook, 1 body, 1 hook, 1 body, 1 hook, 1 body, and that's intentional so that you have slight changes between each of your ads, because post Andromeda, Meta rewards creative variation. And so that's, that basically tells Meta there's a high degree of creative variation here. This is a good thing. If you are not having a high degree of creative variation, then you can't let Andromeda do what I showed you, what I was trying to do, which I showed you over here, which is like match a bunch of different angles to the right people. Meta's unable to do that because you've just filmed, basically the same ad 5 times. And then, it's going to punish you with higher CPMs. Okay. So we want to film unique ads, and we want to have multiple different buying angles in one ad set so that Meta can do its thing. And then, as I said, really just one campaign. Okay. Now, some critical settings to override. When you jump into the campaign, and we're going to go through the campaign workflow in a second here, I just want to preface this with this is so important. Meta is going to force you into a few things. So when you create a leads campaign, it is going to try and force you to use instant lead form. Do not do this. When you create a new campaign, it's going to try and make you use Advantage Plus placements. Do not let it. When you create new ads, it's going to try and apply these AI creative enhancement BS things. Do not let it. It's also going to have you use Advantage Plus audiences, okay? Where it will just try and target all of the different age ranges and genders and stuff like that. Again, based on your customers, this is probably a bad idea. You probably want to restrict certain age ranges. But finally as well, make sure you just turn off, basically as you do all these things, Meta will be like, hey, but what about if we just do 5% of your budget to these things? No, turn it all off. So let's jump in. So firstly, we are going to create a new campaign. We're going to jump into the ads manager, and we are going to go to the top left, and we are going to create a campaign. And by the way, if you are really at stage 1 here and you don't have an ads manager, really easy. You just go to business.facebook.com and you sign in with a Facebook account, a personal Facebook account. If you don't have a Facebook account, what? But secondly, just go and create one. You may need to wait a couple of days if it's a fresh Facebook account before it'll let you create a business portfolio. So probably just leave it for a couple of days and then come back and create one. Go to Facebook, business.facebook.com, create what's called a business portfolio. So I have a business portfolio for Paid House Media. This is also known as a business manager, a BM. Within the BM, you're going to have a bunch of different stuff. You're going to have an ad account, okay? You're going to link it to a business Facebook page, okay? You can't run ads from a personal Facebook account. You have to run it from a Facebook page. So go create a Facebook page underneath your Facebook profile, because your Facebook profile stores all different Facebook pages for your agency. You may also want to connect an Instagram account. I recommend doing that. Connect an Instagram account, because when you want to run ads on Instagram, I think it looks better when it's coming from an Instagram account, especially if that Instagram account has content on it. More on that later. It's also going to have your pixel. Okay, so your pixel is essentially what informs Meta. It's basically so important. It's kind of hard to explain. It's where all the data is stored. Okay, so think about it like this. How does Meta know when someone takes an action from your ad? It's because of the pixel. What you do is you install the pixel onto your website, and it will track different actions. So one example of a pixel event is a page view. So obviously this informs Meta, oh, someone has clicked on the ad and viewed the page, because the pixel is fired. Great. That's also going to then be able to tell us what our CTR, like our landing page click to view is, like all these different metrics that are going to come from that. Also, another event will be, schedule. This is where you make sure that the pixel fires on the thank you page, so that when someone books a call, Meta registers it and it's like, oh great, someone's booked a call. And then you can have more. You can have lead and form fill out, but really for this funnel, it's just page view and schedule within the pixel. And then you can choose which action to optimize towards, and of course we're going to optimize towards the schedule. So that's why in the results column everything says website schedule. So make sure you have a business manager set up, create the ad account, come into the ad account, and then finally create the ad. We want to select leads as the objective for this campaign. We want to name the campaign clearly. So it's a leads campaign. It's pushing this offer and we're launching it on this date. We want to make sure we select ABO here. Well, if you want, you can ignore me. That's totally fine. Make sure we go with broad audience. Okay, at the ad set level, the broad audience, this is where we decide what the audience is. Okay, so we decide the target geography. Make sure that the audience, again, says it's broad here. Okay, that's how you know you're doing broad targeting. I would also come into the further limit the reach of your ads bit. And actually, personally, I like to eliminate anyone who's under 25 years old and anyone who's over 55 years old, because these people don't tend to be great high-ticket customers, just being honest. And then placements as well, as I mentioned, make sure we restrict it just to Facebook and Instagram. Okay, that's it. We do not want to spend on the audience network. Okay, we'll try and get you to spend it on the audience network. Please do not view placements, Facebook, Instagram. Up here, make sure you're targeting the pixel, and then you're good to go. Okay, and then finally, when we're creating the ads, make sure we name the ads clearly. At the ad set level, as you can see, we're naming it. I'll do it by number. So ad set 1, ad set 2, ad set 3. What's the targeting? What countries are we going after? What age ranges are we going after, right? And then within that, if it's ad set 3, then each ad is going to be 301, 302, 303, etc. Right? We manually upload the ad. We do single videos. We don't really love DCTs anymore. We just do single video ads, so multiple different ads within the ad set. We upload the video to Meta. We turn off all the creative enhancement stuff. And then, of course, we add our landing page URL. We're also then adding in our ad copy, so our primary text. I haven't talked too much about primary text. You might be wondering why that is. Very simply, I don't think primary text and copy is nearly as important as the creative. I've proven this. I've tested this a bunch where we've had tons of different copy. Once we find one that just takes spend and works, we won't even bother testing the copy. It's all in the creative, okay? So long as your primary text has a couple things, firstly, making sure that you have the niche that you're trying to target right at the top, because that kind of always appears on the ads. So again, e-com brands, SaaS, kitchen remodeler, contractor. Okay, that's super important. Then the offer, then the differentiators, and then social proof, and then CTA. That's a really good format. You're not going to go wrong with that. It is good to have long primary text because that's going to increase the dwell time. So if someone clicks see more and scrolls through the primary text, the longer they're on that primary text, the better. You can follow some of these guidelines here. Obviously, make sure it's no fluff and make sure it matches the ad and the VSL, but it's super simple. You're also going to have headlines and descriptions. These are even less important. Headlines should be quite short. Descriptions should also be relatively short. This is actually probably a bit long. It should probably be about 2 lines. And so, yeah, once you've created that, you've got your 10 ads loaded up into the ad set, you've corrected the settings and everything's good, you are good to launch, my friends. But of course, we cannot launch if we don't have a website to send the traffic to. So I want to move on to how we create the funnel now. So the way we structure this is we drive eyeballs to the funnel with ads. People go through an application on the funnel after they've watched a VSL, which is a video sales letter. And then once they've booked, they're going to hit a thank you page, which is where we fire the pixel, or at least the schedule action, which is what we're optimizing for. Once they have booked, we're going to go through pretty extensive pre-call nurturing. And then finally, you're going to hop on the sales call and ideally close them. So first things first, how do you build the funnel, the landing page, right? Because that's the first step. Well, there's a few things that you need to keep in mind. So first of all, what tool do you use? To be honest with you, I quite like a tool called Perspective. I'm really not here to send you to any affiliate links or anything like that. That's not the purpose of this video whatsoever. I like Perspective. I also really like Framer. It's a little bit more complicated to use, but the funnels look beautiful. You can also use GHL and you can use ClickFunnels as well. Ultimately, it doesn't matter too much what you use. I think the one thing to keep in mind though is that the more there's a sophisticated the market, the better the funnel and the more professional the funnel it needs to look. If you're going after, again, 8-figure companies, really big, large companies, you should probably use a tool like Framer or Webflow so you can create something that's really beautiful. If you're going after local business, contractors, agencies, just kind of like SMBs, then Perspective, GHL, ClickFunnels is totally fine. So the one that you're looking at here is built on Perspective. It's super drag and drop, super easy. Couple things you want to have though on any of these funnel builders. The first is some kind of an ICP call out above the headline. Okay, that's really the first thing people should be seeing. I mean, maybe the headline is the first thing they always go to, but the ICP call out should be first because it's kind of prefacing the headline, the subheading, and the rest of the landing page. It's like, this is only for, XYZ niche. And so for my consulting company, I target agency owners, okay, who want to scale with paid ads. So agency owners specifically targeting like e-com local B2B. That's kind of our main specialty, that are doing 25K to 250K a month. That's typically where we get the best results. And then we jump into the headline. Now, with the headline, it's very similar to writing the ads itself. We want to have a couple of things. So firstly, we want to have the unique mechanism. We want to have a time frame. We want to have a benefit. And then we want to have probably some kind of risk reversal too. If you don't have an ICP call out, then you'll obviously need to specifically mention the ICP. So for example, we'll install our $2 million meta ad system. That's our unique mechanism in 14 days. That's the time frame. So you can sign clients consistently. That's the benefit. Okay, we're not going to promise you an amount of clients signed. That's ridiculous, because it's going to entirely depend on how well you execute and how big your company is. But we will promise you that we'll get you to sign clients consistently, which is typically a big problem for our clients. And then finally, risk reversal. This is typically going to go in the subheading. Now, risk reversal, as I said earlier, doesn't necessarily mean a guarantee. We do have a guarantee on our done for you offer, which is what you're kind of seeing here. This is one of our paid ads funnels, by the way, not our website. Risk reversal can also be reversing, I suppose, the ramifications of what they're currently doing, which is a really wordy way of saying, if you don't have a guarantee, what I would put in the subheading is what your offer allows them to stop doing, right? Or do less of. So for example, a subheading that I would put instead of a guarantee is, I'll say the headline first, we'll install a $2 million meta ad system into your agency in 14 days so you can sign clients consistently, so that, we're in the subheading now, so that you don't have to send thousands of spammy cold emails, rely on inconsistent referrals, and spend hours a day posting content, right? That is kind of a risk reversal in the sense that your main offer is going to save them a lot of time and prevent them from making less money. It's kind of hard to explain, but that's the best way I would put it. Next is the VSL, which we're going to get into the structure of that in a second. But typically though, we want to have this at 5 to 10 minutes long. For B2B, that's a really good length. 5 minutes is kind of the gold standard in B2B these days. General rule of thumb is that B2B people have less time on their hands than B2C. And so the shorter the VSL, the better the consumption will be. Also with B2C, there's a lot more fear and skepticism. And so long VSLs work very well in B2C, like 40-minute VSLs. But, a 7 to 8 figure a year entrepreneur won't sit down and watch a 40-minute VSL. They've got shit to do, but they do need to understand the offer, of course, to make sure it's worth their time. And so a 5 to 10-minute VSL, which just conveys the offer, your experience, your social proof, is going to be perfect. Okay, there's obviously needs to be then a button to get started. This should be above the fold, which means on mobile, or on desktop as well, they shouldn't have to scroll to see the button. It should just instantly be there so they can tap it straight away. And then that's going to scroll them down to the application. Now, huge concept here, guys. You must have an application form on your page. Why? Well, because we want to disqualify bad prospects. We don't want anyone who does not meet our criteria booking in, because if they book in, it's a negative flywheel, because Meta will say, okay, this kind of person who makes this amount of money is getting us a result, i.e. they are booking a call, they are triggering a website schedule. Let's go and get more of them. And chances are they're going to be cheaper to get than the actual rich people that you want to attract. And Meta, being a little bit lazy, is going to go after and try and get you the cheapest result. What does that mean? Well, that means we want to stop those people coming in. How do we do that? We have an application form on the page. Okay, so how do you, what would you use? Well, you can use Typeform is really good. I personally love this tool called iClosed. It's kind of like a calendar and a form in one. It's just nice because you can actually see the calendar there. It's a little bit more tantalizing. It's almost like that you don't know there's a form until you kind of get in there with the email, first name, last name, and then all the questions pop up. It's really cool. But you can also use GHL forms. Honestly, guys, just go with one of these. Typeform is tried and true. It works great. It's one question by one question, which is a really engaging form format, and it converts really well. The problem with GHL and some of these other form builders, I think Jotform is okay, is that you don't have the best conditional logic. What you want to be able to do, as I'm going to show you in a second, is have conditional logic, and you're going to route people to different answers and questions based on their answers, okay? By the way, if you're wondering what these little buttons here are, this is just a feature that iClosed has called Lift. GHL has this as well. It's a little pop-up in the right corner that kind of pops out at people after they've been on the page for a certain amount of time. It's just another way to try and get them to book in a call, okay? Very non-essential feature. Now, then we want to have some basic results and social proof, okay? You can make yours look a little bit prettier than this. This is admittedly somewhat lazy of me, but you don't want to have too much case studies and social proof. Remember, core concept here, guys, is that you kind of want the page to be as short as possible so that you get as much consumption on the VSL as possible. The longer the page is, the more people are going to scroll, the less people are going to consume the VSL. That being said, though, it's very important to think or mention that VSLs are typically going to get 20% play rates, which means 4 out of 5 people who land on the page are not even going to watch that thing, okay? That doesn't mean that those 4 out of 5 people won't book a call and become clients, though. Okay, so we need to give them something to consume that isn't the VSL, because they might be on the train, they might be in a plane, like they might not have the time to sit down and watch your VSL in the perfect setting. So we need to sell them with other stuff, such as case studies, such as FAQs. This is really the big one, okay? FAQs, we have a heat map on our site, and it tells us that 22% of just the engagement on the page is at the FAQ section. It's just one of the most engaged stages of the page as possible. And really, these FAQs should just be selling people, as they go down and read them through. And it can be super long as well. And so, if they're not watching the VSL, they're probably going to consume these, and they're probably going to be like, all right, yeah, this is for me. Let me just book in. So that is a rough overview of how you want to structure the landing page. In terms of how you want to structure the VSL, you want to jump into a hook and introduction, which I would probably keep to about 2 minutes. This is probably going to be more of a 10-minute long VSL, to be honest, with all of this stuff. If you want to get to 5 minutes, you're going to have to cut some stuff out. But you want to have an ICP call out, a benefit, an outcome, a differentiation, and an early CTA. Again, very similar to the ads that we've just run. You could probably even take, ideally, once you've proven an ad and you've got a winning ad, you can take that hook and then use that in your VSL because you've proven it. I still recommend having a VSL on the page regardless, but over time, as you start to gather data from your ads, you can improve the VSL based on the ads and what's working, because that's the beautiful thing about ads. You get such quick feedback compared to content, compared to anything else. It's just insane. You could know in a week whether something is a huge buying point for your market. You want to have an early CTA. Again, same thing with ads. With VSL, the engagement drops the longer that you go. So make sure you capture as much of it as you can here. So have an early CTA to just give people who are ready to go, permission to go ahead and book the call. You want to then introduce yourself, name, experience, credentials. You want to jump into the big hairy problem. Why are they on the page? What are they here to get? False solutions, so what they've tried before, why it hasn't worked. Your unique mechanism, how you get the results. This is not the offer yet though, by the way. Expected ROI and results, so case studies and specific outcomes. Stack the deliverables. Here's all the things that we do for you. It's going to save you so much time. Then offer and pricing. Okay, big one here, guys, pricing. I'm on two sides of the fence here. So I actually think you should not include the price in your first VSL. Don't include the price just yet, because everyone's going to skip to the price, by the way, in the VSL. You should have chapters here and everyone's going to skip to the price. Don't have it yet. If you find that the lead quality is low and there's a lot of tire kickers and people that actually are surprised that the price is so high, then you can add the price in as a point of friction. With the funnel, guys, everything is about increasing or decreasing friction. That's a really core concept here. If your bottleneck is not enough calls, decrease friction, okay? That means taking questions out of the application form, as we're going to get to in a second here. That means shortening the funnel, shortening the VSL, hell, even just pasting the damn calendar straight onto it with 0 questions in the form, okay? And I know that sounds crazy. I'll talk about that in a second, but reduce friction. If the problem isn't calls, but is lead quality, increase the friction, more questions in the form, longer VSL, add the price in to weed out the tire kickers, increase the CAC, add the price as a question into the form. Hey, this is the price. Can you swing this? So that's what you need to do. Then guarantee if applicable, and then final CTA, very similar to how we make CTAs in the ads. Okay, quick one, guys, here as well. Pixel tracking. Not gonna lie, I'm not a developer, and you don't have to be to set up pixel tracking. It's not hard at all. I've done it myself many times, but it's not my area of genius. I highly recommend you go and watch another YouTube video. This was the first one that popped up when I searched it. Just make sure that you set up pixel tracking with Google Tag Manager. So go to tagmanager.google.com, create a Tag Manager account for your business, install Tag Manager onto your funnel builder. It's very easy to do. You just install it at the top of the head code on Framer or GHL, CF, ClickFunnels. Some of these have native Tag Manager integrations. And then install your MetaPixel into GTM following a very simple tutorial like this, okay? Super simple to do. Very important to use Google Tag Manager for a few reasons. Firstly, as you progress in your ads journey, there's going to be more and more snippets of code that you want to add onto your site. Microsoft Clarity, Hyros, some stuff that won't necessarily be important now. Google ads, for example, Reddit ads, when you eventually get to that stage. It won't be important now, but the more individual snippets of code that you have, the messier it gets and the slower your site is. So that's the beauty of GTM. You have everything in just one block of code. Also, it's way easier to set up server-side tracking through GTM. Okay, so another concept here when it comes to pixel tracking, you have browser tracking and you have server-side tracking. So for all of you watching this video, if you are not running ads yet, just set up browser tracking for now. There's not going to be much alpha in you setting up server-side tracking from the start. For those of you who are running ads and you don't know what server-side tracking is, or you're not sure that you have it, it's going to be important that you listen up and set this up. So browser tracking, very simply, is where you simply paste a bit of code onto your site, right? So for example, let's go back to page view and schedule. Okay, the way that page view is tracked is just by having the base MetaPixel code that you'll get when you create the pixel installed on every single page of your site. As soon as that triggers Meta know that there's been a page view. The schedule, though, is a separate little piece of code which you can find by just going to Google and searching, MetaPixel schedule standard event snippet, something like that. It's just a little 3 lines of code. If you put that on your thank you page, as soon as someone loads up the thank you page, boom, the schedule action will fire and it will tell Meta we've had a schedule. That's browser tracking. Now, browser tracking is a good starting place, but it's not the end game. Why? Well, if you have an ad blocker on, that can mess with this firing. If you leave before you load the thank you page, that can stop this from firing. And so what you have is Meta missing conversions that it should be capturing and therefore sending less data back to the ads. Secondly, it's also only capturing a page view. It's not capturing much user first-party data. So what server-side tracking does is it takes from the application form that you've got here, it takes data. So it takes the name, it takes the email, it takes the IP address, it takes your daughter's postcode. Like it takes a lot of data it takes click ID, it takes all of this different stuff and sends all of that back to the ads. So that means you're getting more data, and regardless or not of whether the guy's got an ad blocker on or whether he loads the page, it's still getting sent back because Meta is simply just recording that a call has been booked. And so it's going to send all this stuff back to Meta, okay? So you want both browser and server-side tracking firing at the same time. You're also going to get something called an event match quality score with server-side tracking. So how good is the data? And it's out of 10 basically. And you want to make sure that you have a 9.3 ideally. 8 to 9 plus on a consistent basis is the benchmark. This is really important, guys. You know, I recommend you start with browser tracking because this is a little bit complicated and it can be a bit overwhelming. Just start with browser tracking. It takes 5 minutes to set up, get your first conversions, get the ball rolling, and then when the ball is rolling, go and pay a developer to set this up for you. And it's just going to improve your results massively. Okay. If you're technical, you can try to do it yourself, but I just go on Fiverr and I pay a developer. It's not hard at all. Hopefully you're still enjoying the value, guys. One thing that I want to say is there's typically two types of people. One kind of person likes to take kind of broad, objective information and give it a go and go through trial and error. And if that's you, I applaud you. But there's another type of person who would rather get certainty from someone who has done it before and get speed and get customized advice or help. And I just want to let you know that is exactly what I do at my company, The Advertising Co. I give all of the information away for free on my YouTube channel, but unfortunately, I can't make that information customized to you, your specific niche, offer, and situation. If you want that, if you want to have this process specifically customized for you and you want me and my team to hold your hand through it or do it for you, then that is exactly what I do at The Advertising Co. You can click the first link in the description to book a direct call with me. We are very, very limited on capacity and we are picky with who we work with. But if you are that kind of second type of person, then we love to work with you. So go ahead and book that call. Back to the video. Okay, with that out of the way, let's finally talk about application structure. So this is how we have it. So firstly, the first question is, are you in my target niche? Yes or no? I always start with that because obviously I don't care what your name or your phone number or your email is if you're not in my target niche. And so I want to repel anyone that isn't in there. So obviously if it's no, the application is going to end. Next, contact info. Okay. We want to ask for the contact info as soon in the form as possible so that we can start capturing partial submits. So the reason why I recommend Typeform and iClosed is because they capture partial submissions. Super important because I think it's something like 30 to 40% of people drop off statistically when they start filling out your booking form. That's a lot of leads that you can be capturing and that you're paying for. So you want to basically have a partial submit point here in the process, whatever form tool you're using. And then this is where you would have setters dialing these leads that are coming in and people texting them. Okay, another big concept here, guys. It's sort of getting more into sales here, which we're going to touch on in a second. But when someone gives you their phone number, it's very important you phone them straight away within 5 minutes, okay? You probably won't have a setter yet if you haven't built out this paid ad system. In that case, it should be you, the founder, doing this. It's a very important job. You will make significantly more money if you call these partial submits within 5 minutes. And whether that's, even if they book, you still call them to qualify them and warm them up and remind them of the offer and why it's so urgent that they work with you. And of course, if they don't book, you phone them and then you try and set them in. So that's the phoning bit. A setter will do this. But then there's also another role, which I have a separate person doing called an LNS, a lead nurture specialist. This is someone with an iPhone using a tool like SendBlue, or a much cheaper and better alternative, in my opinion, is Link. And this is where we are literally just texting the leads that come in, where we get their info, and we're texting them. I give the exact scripts to my private clients, but pretty much just saying stuff like, hey, saw your info come through. Are you running a ecom brand agency, SaaS business right now? And you try and start a dialogue, okay? So this is a number that the LNS can access, you, the founder, can access, so you can pick up the conversations. Important thing is that it's an iMessage, okay? If you're using like GHL or Calendly, SMS sends, it's not great because if people reply, you can't see that. with here, it's a universal inbox. You can see the reply, and it's an iMessage. iMessage gets way higher response rates than SMS. Okay, it's a bit more expensive, but it is effective. Anyway, that's what we use, and that's kind of what happens at this stage here. Okay, so next is monthly revenue. So this is really the first big qualifying question. So this is Q1. We don't do anything about it straight away, but we basically hold that information and we do stuff with it later. Quick mistake some people make here is they set the top limit MRR too low. So like they're 50K a month or even 100K a month will be like the top tier. It's like, well, that kind of turns off bigger fish. So just make sure it's a sensible range. It'll be like a multiple select question where there's different options like a drop down. And then Q2 kind of depends on your niche. So if you're an ad agency, it's probably like, what's your marketing spend? If you're a, software agency, it's like, what's your funding? Something specific to you, right? You kind of want to have two qualifying questions in here because a lot of people lie about this one, but this one, not that it's hard to lie about, but it's just an extra level of qualification. And then basically based on the last two questions here, we're going to do a couple of things. So if the revenue is just too low, it probably makes sense to just completely exclude them. Same thing here. But if it's like the second from the bottom option, what I would do is I would route them to a question about the price. Okay, so this is what we do. So 0 to 10K a month, like again, if you're watching this and you're in this range, I'm sorry, please consume all my content, scale up, get to the point where we can help you. But right now, I don't take sales calls with people in this revenue range, and neither does my team. And so we just remove these people, okay? But 10 to 25K a month, we got a bit of momentum here, okay? And we will take these calls. And so what that means is we let them go through, but they have to answer a question about the price. Because again, we have our fee, and then on top of that, as I say, 3K a month is really the minimum you want to be spending on ads. So we just check, hey, is that our fee and that, additional spend that you'll have to incur within your budget? If yes, we let them book in with a calendar, but redirect them to a thank you page that does not fire the pixel, okay? Because we don't want Meta to necessarily train on these people. Again, nothing wrong if you're in this revenue range, but it's just business. Of course, if they say no to this, then we obviously remove them, okay? So this is some source. And what you can eventually have doing once you have a higher volume of this going on is have a setter taking these calls. Because again, the calls might be a little bit low quality, but yeah, and you can kind of train setters on these calls. But of course, if anyone easily passes Q1 or Q2, you just let them book in without even showing them the price, and obviously redirect them to a thank you page with the pixel that does fire once they book. And this is a positive flywheel because you're only allowing qualified people to book in, which means that Meta is only learning from qualified people and, sending you back more qualified people who book it, and so on and so on. So that is the application form structure, guys. And so when you have all of this together, you actually are now ready to go live on the ads and start sending traffic from these ads to the landing page. This is how it works, okay? And then I want to quickly look at some key benchmarks here for you. Okay, so when we're live, we want to be looking for the following things. So ideally a CTR, a unique outbound CTR of 1.5 to 3%. The reason I like looking at unique outbound CTR is because it's basically unique based on the account center. So like if someone clicks on Instagram and then clicks on Facebook, that would kind of falsely increase the normal CTR, but unique CTR, it wouldn't increase. So that's just better for me. I prefer that. So 1.5 to 3%. As I said, my best ad was a 2% unique CTR, and anything under 1.5 I find just kind of dies out pretty quickly. We want a 6 to 10% application rate from clicks. From page views, it's going to be a little bit less. And really the main one that you want to be looking at is 3 to 5% book calls. So of the people that click, 3 to 5% should book. That's a really good rule to follow. So if you get 100 clicks, you are typically going to expect 3 bookings. I would say 5 might be on the higher side there. That is a good conversion rate to have. Of course, then of the people that book, we want 70% sharp rates. And then obviously we want 20% close rates, okay? And a good CAC is really anything from 1.5 to 3. To be honest with you, that's not a hard and fast rule. If you're selling 10K a month retainers, your CAC's probably going to be like 4K to 5K, and that's going to make perfect sense for you. Again, there's no, your cost per call has to be $200, bro. Cost per call is a stupid metric. The only metric that matters, guys, is return on ad spend. If that return on ad spend is a 1.5x to 2x within the first 30 days, you're in a good spot, okay? And then, of course, on the back end, if depends 5, 6, 10x, then you're also going to be good as well. Just make sure that your LTGP to CAC is solid, and then you're going to be able to scale. So quick decision-making framework. Make sure to not touch an ad set for 5 to 7 days after launch. Guys, one of the biggest mistakes that you can make is just making too many edits in the account, moving stuff, touching stuff. You've got to remember, really complicated, sophisticated AI is working behind the scenes to get your ads out to the right people. If you're constantly changing things and messing with it, it's going to keep resetting that learning and messing with it. So make sure you do not touch new ads that you launch for 5 to 7 days. Make sure you wait for at least 100 unique outbound clicks before judging an ad set. If you're judging an ad set based on less than 100 clicks, it's just not a very significant sample size. By the way, make sure these clicks aren't BS as well. Make sure you've excluded the audience network. And these are like clicks from Facebook feed, Instagram stories, Facebook Reels. One placement that can get a bit icky is Facebook ads on Reels. It's different from Facebook Reels. It's a bit confusing. But if you break down your ads by placement, this is a placement that can pop up, and this can sometimes just give you a ton of like terrible clicks. So you may need to exclude that, but make sure that you get 100 unique clicks. And then you basically want to look at, okay, is cost per call within KPI? If it is, scale it. If it is not, kill it and launch a new batch that you test for 5-7 days. It's as simple as that. You also want to look at things like the CTR and the hook rate. If the CTR looks really good, but your cost per call, you either haven't got a call or your cost per call is really high, you might want to let it run for a little bit longer. But if the CTR is like a 0.6 at this point, and you've got no calls or the call quality is terrible, you can just go ahead and kill it. Keep in mind, it might take you a while to get to this depending on what your cost per click is. You know, if your cost per click is $20, you're gonna have to spend $2,000 on the batch to get 100 clicks. If you're spending $100 a day, that's actually 20 days. Okay. Now $20 CPC might be quite high, but if you're targeting a competitive niche, it's actually not. Even a $10 CPC is going to take you 10 days. So the 5-7 days thing isn't a rule. It's just a minimum. Even if you're spending a couple $100 a day, I still wouldn't touch it for 5-7 days. And by the way, don't go out the gates too hard. Even if you've got some serious means behind you, you're doing a couple $100K a month, you want to rip $1,000 a day on ads, I wouldn't do that, man. I personally still start my ad sets on $200 a day. That's where I feel comfortable launching new ad sets at. And then only once I get performance do I scale. Spending $200 a day, it's typically like 6-7 days. We'll get some results. We'll get some traction, some lift off. Yeah, you don't want to make incremental tweaks either. Just scale or kill. That's really the mindset that you should be in. And again, guys, expect inconsistency until you start to accumulate 50 to 100 schedule events in your pixel. It's not going to be like, oh, my cost per call is $300. I get 3 calls a week. I get 5 calls a week. No. It's going to be, you get 5 calls a day on one day and then you get nothing for a week. It's like super inconsistent. And until you get more data in your pixel and you just get experience, it's going to always be like that. So just quickly in terms of like, oh, how much creative do I test? Well, depending on your spend, this is what I recommend. So $100 to $500 a day. Typically that's 8 to 12 new creatives a month. 500 to 100 a day. That's 500 to 1,000 a day. That's 5 creatives a week, 20 a month. This is what we do for our done for you clients at my consultancy, the Advertising Co. Because if you want to scale to $1,000 a day, 20 a month is really the minimum. And then every time you add an extra $1,000 a day ad spend, you want to add an extra 20 creatives a month, basically. That's how I look at it. Hopefully this is kind of mind-blowing for you guys. You know, I don't know where you're at in your journey, but the reason I started my consultancy is because I just genuinely don't see a lot of agencies spending $1,000 a day on ads. If you look at e-com brands, it's like a bloody hygiene standard to be spending $1,000 a day on ads. Very few agencies are spending $1,000 a day on ads and making it work. Imagine if you spend $1,000 a day and you get 10x returns, right? You're making $300K a month, right? From those ads, you know, over the lifetime of your customers. So an extra $300K a month, I don't know about you, but I'll definitely take that. So anyway, that is kind of my process for ads, landing pages, and benchmarks. I want to quickly touch on sharp rates and sales. Okay, so at this point, you know, I know that was quite long, but at this point, we have done a very important thing, guys. We have solved lead generation forever. Me, let that sink in. Why do I say that? Well, if you get this right, if you, make an amazing offer to a market that's big enough with the right messaging that resonates with them, with the right ads scripted in the right way that gets them to take action, with the right media buying settings, sending them to the right funnel, you get 3% of those clicks booking a call, you've solved the lead generation puzzle. You are now able to control how many meetings you get on your calendar whenever you want. So long as you're willing to pay the price, whether that be $200, $300, $500 per call, it's going to vary based on your niche, but it's pretty much going to be similar, like always in that range, $200 to $500. You can get as many meetings as you want. It's pretty cool. So we've solved the lead generation problem, but unfortunately calls are meaningless if they don't turn into sales. We're not just taking sales calls. We're not taking calls for fun here, right? They're meaningless. The only thing that matters is revenue from those calls. So we've got to talk about sharp rate and sale. Now, at the moment, I have a 32% close rate on live calls and I have 88% sharp rates for my companies. This is across Paid House and my consultancy. So we're getting some pretty good results here. Now, what do we do to get these results? Well, firstly, we have an automated pre-call email nurture sequence. We send roughly about 9 emails, 6 to 9 emails is what I recommend, which sounds crazy, up until the point of the call. And then on the day of the call, we remove them from the sequence. Now, what does this do? This is really just here to give them all the information that they need. Think about it as information. This isn't really show rate. This is actually more close rate. It's going to answer their questions. It's going to set their expectations. It's going to address specific objections that they have. Again, it's going to give them the worst case scenario of them working with you, all right? It's going to give them a roadmap of what it looks like to work with you over the next 90 days. It's going to install urgency into why they need to act, okay? It's just more information. So you make sure, basically what we want to optimize towards is making this sales call as damn near a cashier call as possible, all right? We want people turning up, being like, hey, I know everything about your offer. I'm ready to go, with maybe a couple questions in there. That's what we want. That's what we want to optimize towards. How do we do that? Information. Okay, we need to give them information. Okay, again, I give all my templates for these emails to my private clients. But broadly speaking, this is the kind of sequence that you want to follow. And I use Zapier to trigger the sequence. So I send these emails out from my ESP. I personally use Beehive. So whatever you host your newsletter on, I don't recommend sending it from your CRM because you don't get the analytics. We want to be tracking open rate on these emails pretty closely. We want to make sure we're getting 40 to 50% open rates. And so that's why I recommend sending it from an ESP. And so as soon as someone books a call through Calendly or iClose, you basically just add them in as a subscriber. It's your ESP and then add them into this automated sequence and it should start sending. And you really want to do sort of, if you're doing 9, 3 a day, if you're doing 6, 2 a day with 3 to 6 hour gaps between each of the emails. And yeah, that's pretty much what you do. On top of that, we're going to have default email reminders from our calendar software. On top of that, as I covered earlier, we're going to have manual iMessaging reminders. I use Link. I love their tool. It's amazing. It's super affordable. Yeah, there are a couple of scripts you can grab here. Feel free to use those. In addition to that, okay, if you do not want to use this, because by the way, I say it's affordable. It's not necessarily something I would invest if I was only spending $100 in on ads, to be honest with you. So if you're not at that stage, then what I would do is I would text people from your own phone. Do it yourself. Text them from iMessage or WhatsApp. If you're in Europe, WhatsApp works quite well. And then obviously send the automated reminders, so email and SMS from your calendar software, as I briefly touched on here, okay? I would send these anyway, even if I am doing, manual blue iMessage sending in addition to that. Okay, so these are more or less automations. I guess this is technically manual, but this is all overseen by the LNS, so the lead nurture specialist, which is just sort of like a VA doing this stuff. But the setter functions, okay, is obviously where your appointment setter is doing this stuff. Now, question, when do I hire an appointment setter, or when do I hire a closer? We're going to get to that in a second. But briefly, you would hire a setter when you have too many sets to do yourself. So, if you are getting to the point where you've got to make, 20, you're getting 20 leads in a day, or 15 to 20 leads in a day, that's a lot of leads. And, chances are you're probably not dialing all those leads, within the first 5 minutes. So at that point, you're leaving money on the table. So that's when I would recommend hiring a setter, okay? So quick setter functions. So number one is calling, texting applicants who haven't booked a call. So you got a partial submit, they didn't book within 5 minutes. You dial them, no answer, dial them again the same day, no answer, try again the next day. If no answer after 3 attempts, you want to add them into your daily newsletter sequence. By the way, you should have a daily newsletter that you're sending out 3 to 5 days a week. You're making one CTA a week. That's more of an organic strategy, but as you start to run ads, you're going to accumulate a lot of these emails and leads, and a lot of them won't buy straight away. So make sure you add them into a long-term nurture sequence or a daily newsletter or a weekly newsletter even that you send. And so over time, they're going to come back and buy from you. Setter function number 2, this is where you are going to obviously follow up and dial people who cancel or no-show. So again, if someone no-shows or cancels, add them to the queue, dial them every day for the next 5 days, text them, call them, and if no answer after 5 attempts, again, we're going to put them into the email sequence. And then finally, number 3, we're going to call people who book in as well. All right. So call people who book in. The whole idea here is we're going to try and confirm the call. This is a really meta concept that I want you guys to focus on. I forgot to mention, but when someone books, we're actually sending them to a page that looks a little bit like this. Okay. We give them step-by-step instructions. The first is to watch a thank you video. The next is to confirm the meeting on Google Calendar. The next is to watch the breakout videos before their call so they can understand about your offer and get their objections handled. And then the next is to watch some testimonials. Okay, so this is an example of a thank you page video. And of course, this is where we would have the schedule pixel firing. Okay, and this is where we would actually have the calendar, whatever calendar software you're using, redirecting after they book to that page. And I bring that up because, the point of that page is to get them to confirm the call via Google Calendar. Any kind of confirmation is okay, whether it's Google Calendar, verbal, text confirmation, but we need something. If they don't confirm the call, we kind of want to cancel it, okay? It's optional. If you're not getting many leads, you might not want to cancel it. But at the stage where you're booking 5-10 calls a day, you need to get confirmation. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting a slot that someone else could book into, okay? And a general rule of thumb is the less calendar availability there is, the higher the cost per call. And this is an argument of why you want to bring on a closer, by the way, because as you get busier and busier as a founder, you obviously have other commitments. You can't just take sales calls all day. And so your calendar availability is going to go down, and which means that people have less time that they, time options that they want to book into. So your cost per call is going to go up, okay? But I digress. Anyway, so we want to phone these bookings in, okay, just to confirm them in. If they've already confirmed on Google Calendar, this is less necessary, but I still like to do it because it's not just about the call confirmation, it's also about discovery. Okay, so you call them in, you ask them some discovery questions. Hey, what agency are you running? What do you guys do? You said 50 to 100K a month in your revenue range. What specifically is it? What's holding you back right now? You can get a lot of the discovery done so that the 45 minutes with the closer, the discovery is basically done. The setter sends it to the closer. The closer can ask a couple of extra questions. He knows all about your business and he can really just focus on the pitch and the objection handling. And it also warms the prospect up massively and reminds them of who you guys are and why you're so great. So that's really what I like to do with the setting. Now, jumping into sales and closing. So close rate target should be somewhere in the 20 to 40% range on live calls. Okay, we've actually gotten up to the 40% range, and anything 30% plus, your unit economics are working well. Below 20% though, there's going to be a problem with lead quality and pre-call nurture. What I like to do is when I bring on closers, I will basically and a closer is someone doing the sales for you. And, I bring on a closer when I have so many slots in my calendar that I cannot dedicate myself to the other important jobs in my business, like hiring, managing talent, building systems. I won't let them take calls for a week. So 1 week, they are just drilling my VSL, drilling my course, drilling all my sales calls that I've taken, like 20 sales calls that they're just drilling. And every single day we are meeting and answering questions. And at the end of this week, we're going to do a mock call. If they fail this mock call, I reset them back to the beginning, or I just let them go. And I had that in the contract. You're paying so much money for these calls. You do not want to let someone who is not good take any calls. You're going to waste money. All right. But once they pass this mock call, I will, for the next week, put them on half calendar. So 1 week on half calendar. And then the next week after that, they're going to be on full calendar. So it's a 2-week ramp process. For the following 2 weeks, so 2 weeks after that, are below half of my KPI. So let's say my KPI is 30%. So if they're below a 15% close rate, I'll fire them right then and there so they don't last a month. Okay. But if they are higher than half of my KPI, which is typically 30% on live calls, then they're good. Okay. And obviously, in the second month, I obviously want to see them get to that 30%. Otherwise, I'm going to put them on a PIP, which is a performance improvement plan. And if they fail the PIP, again, after another month, they don't hit this, they get fired again. So that's how I manage closes. Now, in terms of close rate, this is primarily determined by how the prospect enters the call. So if your pre-call system has done its job, the closer's role becomes confirming the fit and handling a couple of objections. I truly believe that marketing is sales. Marketing is just sales one to many. So if you're great at marketing, you've done so much of the sales already that the closer is really just there to take a check. So if you're getting a lot of calls that are very, the prospect needs to be educated about the offer. What is this? Why does it benefit me? It's pretty much a marketing problem. It's not even a closing problem. It's a closing problem if you get the lead to hop on the call where they know the offer and they know what's up and the closer still isn't closing them. Okay. This is what I call fringe deals. So if these are deals that could have been closed but aren't being closed, that is what you want to look at and target your QC, your quality control around, and your decisions around whether someone is good at closing or not. So a couple of sales strategies, you guys. Number one is make sure you sell 3-month commitments. Firstly, it's realistic. You're not going to get someone results in 30 days most likely. So it's actually like an easy sell. It's like, look, anyone who's tying you into not tying you into 90 days does not have your best interests at heart. It's going to dramatically improve LTV as you're able to build rapport over those 90 days. And it's also going to allow you to increase your close rates, but more importantly, you're going to be able to charge more. Here's the thing, guys. If you're an agency, you're typically used to charging just monthly. I need to take you out of that. And I want to talk to you about charging in durations. You don't want to sell, it's a monthly retainer of 1,500 a month. You want to say it's 4.5K for 3 months. That's what you sell. You sell 4.5K for 3 months. You don't even talk about the monthly price. If they want to break it up, you can let them do that, but let them know it's going to be more expensive. It's 4.5K if you pay them full now. If you want to break it up, it's going to be 2K a month. You want to really incentivize people to pay up front or pith so that you can collect more cash and you're going to be in that 1.5x to 2x range. And of course, the idea is, after the 90 days, you still get them to renew. Either they pay upfront again, they pay quarterly again, or they jump onto the monthly recurring plan. Okay, that is the game. So that's that. I mean, there's so much detail I can go into this here. Like I could honestly make this video like 10 hours because there's so much to talk about. But you really want to even use financing if you can. Like monthly recurring is kind of like the last ditch effort. If you are selling, a retainer offer, by the way, and not a setup offer, obviously a setup offer, it's, you could still use financing, but you don't want to really let them break it up into monthly. You want to use financing tools like Split It, which you can get through WAP and Klarna and stuff like that. If they can't, actually swing that. And then of course, final thing is obviously letting them pay monthly, because some cash is better than no cash, right? But, sometimes with agencies, it's actually about signing less clients. It's kind of funny. Like you might, like with info, it's like as many clients as possible, you smash the front end. But with agency, it's like, well, you could sign as many clients as possible, but some clients might churn after 1, 2, 3 months, and that might only make them worth 5K. You really want to go after those 20K clients, because that's what's going to give you the return on ad spend that you want. And so it might be you turn quite a few of these away, you only sign a couple of these, but you actually make more money than if you were to sign a bunch of these, because your systems and your team are way less stressed and they're able to actually keep these clients for way longer and keep them happy and keep them, buying other stuff and upselling and stuff like that. Anyway, another strategy is obviously using real scarcity. Urgency is such a big thing here, man. If people are getting on the phone with you, you're paying them to get on the phone with you, and they're just like, yeah, sounds good, I might wait like 2 months. There's a problem. There's a problem in your marketing. There's a problem in your sales process. We need to strike the fear of God into these people so that they buy on the first call as much as possible. I'm not saying you can't have a 2-call close process. Transparently, with our offer, about 60% was a 2-call close. So we'd basically take the first call, we would do an audit / an action plan, and then we would hop on the second call. And this is what I recommend you guys do. Make the second call actually worth it for them. Don't just make it a fucking follow-up because they know they're just going to get sold on that call. Make it actually some kind of an audit or an action plan call. 60% went to that, but the other 40% closed in the first call, which was great for cash flow and everything else because we had a lot of urgency. And then finally, when to hire a closer. I typically say 3 to 4 sales calls a day is a good point. Obviously, as you're going to have that 2-week ramp period, which simultaneously you can increase the ad spend so that they can get, 6, 7, 8 calls a day that they can take. But my rule of thumb is, 100 calls a month per closer is a good place to be, which roughly works out to about 5 a day, because obviously they're going to have follow-ups. They're going to have time where they need to train and meet with you and all that stuff. In terms of how to compensate them as well, keep it simple, guys. The model I like best is to basically do this. So if you're selling a retainer offer, I would recommend 3 months. You can obviously do 6 months if you've got the stones for it, but 3 months is pretty standard, and give them 10% of that contract value. If they renew past the 3 months, that's really because of your fulfillment team, not because of the closer. So I wouldn't give any additional comp to the closer. I might give a little bit of comp if they are the one responsible for jumping on a call and actually getting them to close. I might give an additional 10% just on that month, but that's where I would end it. Okay. I wouldn't give like infinite lifetime recurring commitments. And if you're selling a setup offer, you give 10% for the setup, and then if they recur, you would again give 10% of the 3 month. If they recur, you should kind of try and get them to recur on 3 months. So then I would give 10% of that. That's typically how I do it. Commission only. I actually don't recommend low base. Commission only, and then obviously you want to be meeting with them on a daily basis, reviewing calls on a weekly basis to maintain quality. And again, I could just make this is so brief. I could make this this video all about closing and sales, but really this video is about paid ads. Okay, but that's just a bit on the sales side of it. Okay, cool. So at this point, if we've done this right, we have people showing up to the call because you're doing all of this. So they're showing up at 88% ideally, and you are closing at 30% ish. Again, not going to make this video too much about sales. There's other people who are way better than sales than me on YouTube that'll teach you how to do a discovery, a pitch, objection handling, answering questions. The only thing I will say here is you should have a sales deck. We had a very good sales deck at Paid House, which allowed us to close a lot more clients. So this is an example of the sales deck, quite similar to the VSL. We go over the problems, we go over the solutions, we go over what happens next after they pay. We cover the team, we cover some results that we've generated, and that would be pretty much it. Okay. But just seeing something tangible massively increased trust, especially with cold traffic. Okay. With warm traffic, you don't really need a deck. With cold traffic, I would recommend it. But okay. So if you're doing all of that right, we're getting closes, we're getting shows. Let's just quickly cover how can we get LTV, because these are really the core 3 stages, okay? So stage 1 is getting meetings. That's obviously the meta ads part, right? That's the biggest stage. The second part is getting sales, which is all about, pre-call nurture and closing ability. And then the third part is getting lifetime value, okay? So this gets us our good cost per call. Let's say this gets us our cost per call of $200 to $300 consistently. This gets us our CAC, which is going to be $2,000 to $3,000, let's say. But this gets us our money, so our $20,000 to $30,000 revenue from those clients, all right? And of course, if this part is messed up, then again, this isn't going to work, all right? We've got to have a good service. We've got to have good fulfillment. So a couple of things I want to run you through. So first, what do we do when we sign a client? Well, we create a Slack channel. So the closer, the person who closes the deal, will create the Slack channel with, the CEO, the closer himself, the client, the account manager. We're sending an onboarding form into that Slack channel. We're filling out a conversion form, which is really the handshake between sales and delivery. And it also triggers all of our automations. So it sends over a contract, an onboarding email. It creates a template in our project management software for the client that we have to go and do. I've got another video on this channel going through how I productize fulfillment. Again, we want to think of this as a factory, guys. We sell a product. Okay, we sell a process. We don't sell customized services. That's not scalable. We want to sell a product and a process. Every client goes through the same client journey again and again. And so important to have a client journey. I'm going to get into that in a second. But whoever closes the deal fills out the conversion form. This is going to capture the client data, the client situation, the goals, the communication style. This is going to feed into a separate channel in Slack so the right account manager can see all that, get context, okay? The account manager is then going to reach out and send the onboarding call link to the client. A lot of you guys really feel like you can't get out of the weeds. It's so simple. Hire a closer and get your account managers to take on onboarding calls. If you can do those 2 things, you're going to massively remove yourself from the day-to-day. Anyway, so then we jump into the client journey. So for us, we had a few core stages. We had research, we had setup. Okay, so we would research the clients, this is for Paid House. We'd research the client's market. We would set up their marketing. We would build out their campaigns. We would launch. We would optimize. This would typically take about 14 days. And then obviously the optimization stage is what they're paying for us for on a monthly basis. And then we would have weekly fulfillment team meetings where we would basically rank clients green, yellow, or red. And then we would prioritize actions on whether they were green, yellow, or red. So red means, very simply, the client's going to churn. Right? If we don't do something drastic, the client's going to churn. Yellow means client could churn. It would be a bit of a surprise. We're facing challenges. It's not perfect, but it's also not, completely on fire. And green is, it would be a huge surprise if the client churned. And so then we want to rank those. And then obviously the goal is to minimize churn. So we're going to simply take action on the clients that are in the red. Okay. We pretty much would skip the clients in the green. They're great. Awesome. Let's not focus our energy there. Let's focus on what we need to focus on. And again, couple of strategies to reduce churn. Selling longer commitments is super important. So if you can work your way up to selling 6-month commitments, after the setup or off the rip, can be a bit tricky with cold traffic, but just sell longer commitments. Increasing pricing. So for example, charging quarterly is a really good way of doing this. Increasing pricing obviously means that higher payer clients who are more committed and easy to retain. Making sure that we've got a complementary upsell service so that we can solve more of the client's problems and make more money. And making sure we're having weekly calls with the client as well. Okay, building that rapport over time as we deliver the service to them. Finally, one thing I want to touch on is you need to upsell. Okay, if you don't upsell, you're not going to make as much money as you could. This is why we're able to get a 10x ROAS and very easily get a 30K LTV at Paid House. It's because we don't just sell Google ads, we sell, a couple of different things. And so 1 in 3 of our clients are going to upsell onto an additional service. This can change the game for you. If you are a single service agency, if you only sell one thing, it's going to be fine, but you genuinely would probably make twice as much money if you had a really good complementary upsell that just makes sense. So one of our best upsells was email marketing. We would drive traffic with Google ads, and then we would basically have email marketing that would be like, okay, we're driving all this traffic, now we need to make more money from them. So this was just a really good backend upsell retention that a lot of people took up. And yeah, very, very brief on the fulfillment side. As I said, this is really about meta ads today. It's a meta ads free course, but again, I can't talk about meta ads if I don't talk about fulfillment. It's all great booking calls, but the most important thing is making $20,000, $30,000 out of every client that you close. So yeah, that is the complete framework, guys. We have been over a lot today. We've been over offer creation, messaging, ad creation, account setup optimization, funnel build outs, a little bit of sales and show rate, and a little bit of fulfillment as well. You have a lot here that can really get you to 200K a month, just like I did in my own agency. Now, being honest with you, you have 2 options. Option 1 is you can treat this like every other YouTube video, add it to your watch later, tell yourself you'll come back to it, but nothing really changes. Option 2 is you can shortcut the process. I will work with you directly to build this entire system into your agency, either on a done for you or a consulting basis. We'll go through your offer, your messaging, your ads, your funnel, your show rate system, your fulfillment SOPs, all of that. If you want certainty, if you want direct access to me and my team, and just a step-by-step roadmap of how to do this so that we can compress the amount of trial and error you'll have to go through, and so we can get you signing clients consistently and scalably quickly, then there is a link in the description. There's only going to be one link. It's just going to be to book a call directly with me, where I will actually kind of take all the information that you've learned today and I'll customize it onto your agency and your offer and your situation. Okay. So it's really a win-win. That call is going to be easily over $1,000 of value. Even if we don't end up working with each other, I'm going to point you in the right direction. I'm going to show you which part of this you really need to focus on, or that you might be getting wrong if you're already running ads, and you're going to leave that call with a lot of value. So completely up to you, of course. You can just keep getting the value for free and use what I've kind of given you here. But if you are someone who wants to scale fast and you are an action taker, then I highly recommend clicking that link in the description. Thank you for watching. Peace.